Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. Our guest for this one is TeaTime, who is a commentator who actually has been around the scene quite a long time. I'm going to guess I think just doing commentary about 10 years, right?
I've been commentating for 11. I've been in CS since 2016, so 9 years in CS and 2 years before that was Dota. So I have been here, there.
Okay. What about, let me ask you this then. One of the things that I actually do think has only recently come to light through people talking about shady tier 2 TOs not paying and things like that. One thing people might not realize in esports, but particularly Counter-Strike is a crazy gear of haves and have-nots. So if you can't get into what they call the tier 1 or maybe even tier 1.5, whatever the people get to do the big lands basically, people might not realize it doesn't just go you just make 80% of the guy above you. It can drop off really heavily, and actually some of those games which in theory can be the same teams at those lands, sometimes people aren't being paid very much to do those games, and obviously then there's even the problem sometimes you don't even get paid anyway, maybe the company goes bust or it's not. Is it hard? How do you mentally hang in there with the grind of doing all these online tournaments?
So to be honest, I think there's one or two things that go into this. First of all, you have to be smart about not working with the companies that are going to screw you over, right? At some point, you have to just clock that and say, well, right, if you're not paying me what I'm already owed, I'm not working with you. And a lot of casters aren't willing to take that stand because they're newer. Also, they weren't here before COVID time. And the other thing is, Thorin, that ever since the pandemic, casters in Tier 2 actually make a lot of money.
Oh, okay.
I think people really don't understand how the industry dynamic has changed. I'll talk about more, I'll touch on this more later on in another point as well. But actually, Tier 2 casters are doing well enough to make a full-time living off of this, right, even in a Western country. I'm obviously living in Pakistan, which is a big advantage. It's one of the things I know Monty also talks about in some of his videos about how he's had to move to Korea for being able to pursue Last Free Nation full-time. I think that is one of those sort of key secrets that if you've got mobility and you can move to a lower cost country, if you actually care about your career, doing that for a couple of years is really worth it. And even if not, Tier 2 casters, I'm fortunate enough to be at a level where I am getting hired a few lands here and there. I am getting hired by, PGL for some of their Asian stuff, especially, and ESL last year, I did some challengers with them. You do well enough to make a full-time living. What sucks is obviously the anxiety and how it feels like things are degrading and just, even if people are paying you on time, they're very bad at communicating with you. I know it's bad in Tier 1 as well. I can tell you it is so much worse in Tier 2 when no one gives a fuck about who you are. So yeah, there's goods and bads, but I do think it's gotten a lot better than it was 7 years ago when I was in this as well.
Oh, fair enough.
7 years ago is when I would have been casting with... No, actually, when did I cast with you? We casted in 2020.
We were casting together from 19 to 20. And there's a funny story about this, Thorin. Actually, I know you'll appreciate this one. What I did was, so I got into Counter-Strike later on. I wasn't very good at it initially at the casting. Some people say I'm still not, but fuck you guys. No, but back then, I didn't know who to duo with because I genuinely didn't know who's a good color or who isn't. I used to think like a legendary eagle is probably someone who knows a lot about the game or something. So what I did was I just saw everyone you hired as your personal assistant.
Oh, okay.
And I just reached out to all of them. So you hired Max, Malit, and Maui, if you remember. And I reached out to both of them. I've actually casted ESL Pro League Season 6 LAN Finals with Max Malit on the B stream. I casted with Maui forever. Then you had Sam W. Delorme on a lot of your shows as well. I reached out to literally everyone who is if you're under 1,200 followers and Thorin's bringing you on
I'm
more
the seal of
once,
approval, right? I get it.
Okay. Yeah, basically. Okay. I don't get Counter-Strike, but he's been watching it for a long time. He probably knows something I don't.
By the way, I will say as well, obviously of those three names, only Maui still exists, in esports. That's actually sad, because if you remember those two other people, the Max Malit guy was just an interesting guy from Australia who had kind of a bit of a spicy attitude. The Sam Delorme guy was actually really interesting. If people don't know, he was I think he was Canadian. He was a guy who was I think he was actually a philosophy student or something. So when he would write an article, by the way, it had a really, it's almost a bit like what Heku does now, where he'd bring in some external philosophical concept to the art. It was actually really interesting shit, but sadly, this actually sort of ties into the topic we're discussing now. Because those people, were trying for a few years and had limited success, but they didn't get a full-time career out of it, a lot of people just moved on to other things. I think the Sam guy was in uni. I think the Max guy actually works in, I think music journalism or something in Australia now, wherever it was he lived. So it's just an example. It's actually why, even though, Maui, in your case, I'm sure people still do that thing they do where they go, you're just farming drama for clicks. Mate, do you know how much persistence it takes to fucking be around this long and to go through the down times and the hard times and reinvent yourself and do it? It's anyone who does the job on some level I have respect for. You know what I mean?
There's some survivorship bias for sure from people here, like Kassad, that says just stick it out no matter what.
I know.
But for some of those guys, I mean, Sam Delorme and Max, I feel like they made a lot of good content earlier. I feel like actually the one guy
Oh yeah, my boy Stu
shout out all the time. Yeah, Stucci was the one guy I still always want to shout out.
Bro, I'm not even joking.
One of the best writers ever.
That guy, for real, I used to genuinely consider him like my protege. Because the crazy thing was, not only did he follow multiple esports, bro, he's the only other person I've ever met who could do like loads of content. Bro, the amount of articles he was writing was crazy.
Also, the quality of his articles were like Zach Lowe for the NBA.
Yeah.
He was breaking down strategies, styles. He was doing so much more than anybody else.
He was the sleeper OP, you're right. He was sick, mate.
I tried so hard to copy his writing style because, like, for 2 years when I wasn't making enough money during commentary, because before you couldn't do this full time, I was doing a lot of writing for different publications, and all I used to be like, I write fantasy in my spare time on Wattpad, don't I? Like, I can definitely write like Stucci does narratively, and apparently it doesn't translate that well.
I'll also say as well, he also actually had that secret, which, by the way, I've never claimed to have. I think I have like a good writing voice, but as people can see, I'm probably better in video because that's where like the humour works and stuff. Stu too also had that quality that if you ever followed him from League of Legends, that guy Theon on Fire had, which is they're just natural writers, bro. Like their turn of phrase is crazy. Like what would take me a whole paragraph to say because I'd like articulate it all. They'll just put in like it's the skill of a poet. They would just say like a sentence that just described it that way, and you could visualize. Which, by the way, anyone who has that skill, I think, is mega at writing, and it's just really enjoyable to read. So yeah. Shout out to those people. Didn't know we'd actually mention them in an episode of anything because that's many years ago, but all good. Yeah. It's all good. And also, people don't know, that's actually how, in Maui's case, I actually knew he could be good on fucking desks because he'd already done all these write-ups about teams and analysing the structure and who plays what role and guessing it, what strat they pulled. So I wasn't like I was going in blind. I actually knew, essentially, as long as you don't shit the bed on camera, you could probably do this gig. Because you know what? By the way, there's actually a video someone put online. It's only my highlight, sadly, from that epicenter where you, and Potter do that LAN, where last minute I'll host it or whatever. And that was meant. If people don't know, like, bro, I don't think they gave us any prep for that. We really just turned up, and it's like I was hosting for the first time, and we're just left to run the event because we were like the piggyback broadcaster of the Russian one. So we were like just left off in the room, mate, just figuring it out. It's like we could have said anything. We could have done whatever we wanted. That's the one, if people remember, where like they actually were just fucking with me in the ear all the time on the earpiece, Maui. And at the end of the event, I think I even just said something bad like, that's the last episode I'll ever be working. And then I closed the show and like throw it to the shit. Because it was that bad. I was like,
you know how right you were.
The joke is this was in December 2019, so I was more right than I actually realised at that point in time. Exactly. But anyway, let's get into the episode.
I think, well, in general, I think because if people are listening to this, some of the people are aspiring to actually be on the desk or caster or anything like that. I feel like the great ways to get into it if you're not actually getting gigs is to write or YouTube. I think YouTube and writing are the biggest proofs that we can see you either have a mind for it in writing or YouTube is more about the presentation side. Because if I take what Fi's saying on his YouTube channel, some of it's well researched, don't get me wrong. It's not always, if I read it in writing, I wouldn't be blown away, but it's the delivery. It's being able to create a narrative. And for people that are good writers, I feel like Richard is probably one of the guys today that's still writing pretty regularly and also doing desk stuff. It goes hand in hand. By studying writing and reading a lot, you're going to just come up with more phrases and your word choice is going to be a lot more varied. YouTubers usually fall into the same patterns and traps when they say things out loud. And oftentimes people that transfer from YouTube into cast work, it's like they have that brain of they want to redo it live. So they sometimes hesitate and stumble through the words because they think of this better way to say it as they're doing it, because that's YouTuber brain. But but all of those, they all feed to the live broadcast aspect.
It's actually why, if you notice, it's not just like being lazy with it. It's why I never did the YouTube style of you keep doing takes until it's like the hobby. Because I always thought, how's that ever going to work on a fucking desk? Like, I just do it live in one go, so I better just learn that skill now. Also, one last final thing, because I've referenced it in the past anyway, and me and Maui have laughed about it. I always tell the story that technically Maui is the only ever survivor of the group of people that I never will ever work with, which is people when they were not famous, and they were fans, and they stupidly kept the same alias, and they flamed me on Twitter. If you ever did did that, you are done forever. I don't care. You could literally become fucking like Lord or something, mate. I will never speak to you. You'll never be invited on the show. You are done for. The joke is, though, the reason Maui is the only one to survive TeaTime is because he did it on an alt account. He didn't do it on an account called Mauisnake, and he didn't tell me that story till years after he'd already worked with me. We'd done events. So it's like he waited until it was safe to reveal. And by the way, the wackest thing of all TeaTime, he didn't even flame me about esports. He flamed me about like a take about Russell Westbrook in the NBA or whatever. Like, so that's a pro tip too, which is the problem you always have is if you're a fan. If you're a fan...
I should wait 3 years before telling you my alt account.
Basically, if you're a fan, the problem is this, right? You might not think, well, I've changed. We don't know you, mate. So if all we've had is a bad interaction, we're just going to think, fuck this guy. And in this scenario, especially early on, as this story actually sort of tells... One thing everyone banks on is networking. You have to get people who are ahead of you or have a platform or have a position. When you get in with them, that's how you then get known. I mean, the joke is that circles right back to the beginning. The way you knew who Maui was is I've publicly hired this person to do research for my videos. So if you like my content, he must be doing something. It's like a seal of approval. I agree. It's actually an underrated detail. So it's why, unfortunately, even though I get half of the fun of being a Twitter fan, it's just talking mad shit to pros and stuff. Just think it through. If you ever want to actually work in the industry, at one, could you scrub your account, but they never do that. Or two, maybe just don't do it in the first place. You know what I mean? Because there's other people, again, I won't mention them by name, but there's a few people in the scene where, put it this way, same method of discovery. I either read an article or saw a video, and I thought, hey, this person's all right. Quickly did that advanced search on Twitter, and we'll never be speaking to that person. And even, I don't care, by the way, if you were 16 at the time. I wasn't, so I'd still take it personally. Fuck you. There you go. How about that? Let's get into the episode, though. Right, okay. We always have the guest go first. So what is good at the moment, TeaTime?
Right, so I'm going to lead with something a bit controversial over here because I obviously saw your last episode with 60. I saw you guys talked about this in the bad. I've seen a lot of people talking about this in the bad. And it's really strange to me, right? Because right now, a lot of the conversation is about how, oh my God, October's got all of these, lands coming out in tier 2 or, quote unquote tier 3 lands where people are having to pay to play. VRS is becoming pay to enter, this and that. I don't understand this conversation at all, right? Because I'm in tier 2. I've been in tier 2 for a long time. I genuinely think this calendar year has been the best year in Counter-Strike for tier 2, and it's all because of the VRS system, right? And I'll expand on that on a couple of levels. So first of all, let's look at how many tournaments that you had access to. And to clarify, when I say tier 2, I mean basically teams from rank 15 to 30. I'm not saying 30 to 60. That's tier 3. That's a separate conversation entirely. So when you're looking at the amount of tournaments you had access to, there was 5 PGL tournaments with up to, and only talking about invited, right? I'm not talking about qualifiers at all. Up to like the rank 30th in the world team was invited to play at that tournament. That's 5, $1 million events basically. There was 2 ESL tournaments in Katowice and Cologne where there's 24 teams that are invited. And because your invitations come a few months ago, obviously, you're looking at teams whose VRS ranks and like HLTV ranks up to like number 30-ish coming into the attendance because people just fall down. There's a Fissure tournament that happened in the player break, which only had 1 top 10 team like in attendance, right? So you've got a lot of these like up to rank 22, 23 teams that are coming into play. And then there's a star ladder that's obviously coming in next week with the lowest ranked team because it's clashing with another Fissure tournament. The lowest ranked team invited is number 29. That's 8 tier 1-ish events, which you have massive access to as a tier 2 team. So on straight up invitations, right? That's also 8 LAN events. I'm not talking about the Blast system because Blast is obviously online. I'm not bringing that in at all. In these 8-ish tier lands, you have the opportunity to win a couple of series and actually push yourselves forward to a place where you are no longer in the rat race of tier 2. It has never been easier to escape that rat race than it is right now in the current day and age. On top of that, then you can actually make money in the major now that it's expanded to top 32. And I actually like that Valve did that because it does feel like all of the crowdfunding aspect, fans are actually now funding the entire scene with that in a lot of ways, which is what should be happening. Then if you step down from like tier 1 lands, you've got the Perfect World Challenger Series, which had like a couple of European teams invited. It's like a $75,000 land that happens in China, but by Perfect World, one of them has already happened. 3D Max just won that one. Bait was there as well.
If people don't know, the problem was it was during like Chinese hours though. So as far as I know, it was like early morning for Europe. So I think a lot of people missed it.
Yes.
Right.
And there's going to be another one of those in November. There's a land, which is like 50K for VRS, CIS teams. And then you come down to like the 8 to 15, like tier 3 lands that are happening. we are finally in a place in Counter-Strike where CCT is not the most important tournament circuit in all of CS, right? CCT has been propping up CS so massively despite all of the problems coming into it in terms of online CS. We started giving a lot more credence to it. Every day there's new accusation, all these things. We can actually have a very heavily LAN-based structure. We have more access than ever before. And I mean, for me, the other thing and this is a small aside, I actually think this gives power back to the organizations in a lot of ways when it comes to player negotiations and being able to build for the future and actually having to make smart decisions beyond just hoping you luck into a star player who's going to be doing well. This feels like you can actually run some of these tier 2 orgs as well like a business to me. And I really feel like this has been the absolute best year while I've been in CS for tier 2.
Okay.
Okay. I think then I would just say, well, first off, okay, the most obvious help to tier 2 is the major expansion from 24 to 32 teams. I think that is without a doubt helping more teams than ever before. I mean, before it was obviously 16 teams, now 20, then 24, now 32, and every extra 8 teams that are added practically should be able to fund their operations for the next 6 months if they use their money wisely. I will push back though on it being the best time ever because in 2019, EPL had 16 North American teams, 16 European teams, 8 Oceania teams, 8 Asian teams, and that was all part of a single circuit that led to the EPL finals. And I feel like for that's like 48 teams that are involved in an EPL circuit. It wasn't necessarily as strong for those teams because the Asian and the Oceanic part of it were conducted online. But for the 16 North American teams and the 16 European teams, I guess this is more so benefiting the Oceania, Asia, and North American region. It's probably the best time ever, though, to be now in the 17th through 30th best European teams because those teams are getting a lot of opportunities with all of these various lands that are happening in Europe. It's a lot of the qualifiers, like you're saying, Star Series, even part of the Blast circuit. Those are really benefiting that rung of teams right there. And to be frank, those are probably more in line with the best teams in the world than having 8 Oceania teams. Like let's be real, like the 3rd best Oceania team at any point in time is not very good. It never has been good. So this is probably better for what the scene where the scene's headed or where it has already gotten to. But I think it's good. I think it's a cool way to look at it because all in all, most people just bring the doom and gloom aspect of tier 2 being a rat race of just who can afford to go to the events, who is not cheating, are you being beaten by cheaters? But in reality, there are a lot of opportunities. You just kind of have to hope that things are happening legitimately in those spaces that are available to them.
This is one where the interesting thing is, I will say, TeaTime, this has actually happened. Everything to do with VRS or Tier 2 basically has been by now in every possible category on Snake and Banter over the last year. Because, first of all, they do keep changing the categories and the determination. So obviously sometimes it has been good, sometimes it has been bad. I would say most times, though, actually the most appropriate category is just ugly because it's neither good nor bad. It just depends, like you say, what kind of angle you're taking on it. Like, I'll give you the example. I can totally get, by the way, if you were someone like Zixi, who if he was on a team at like a Fragadelphia, he would win it if it was just a normal LAN. I get why to him it could piss you off actually then some big org with loads of money just cynically wants the VRS points, doesn't even give a fuck about NACS, or maybe even actually competing at this LAN, they just want the VRS points. They turn up and then win it, and then it's sort of like, well fuck, now they're even eating into my little scene. I can see why to them that's a negative. By the way, to the European team, that's obviously a massive positive. And if you're actually just a general fan, maybe now you care more about the event. So it actually depends what seat you're in as to whether that is good, bad, or ugly. So I would say this. I know what you mean in one sense, because like one area where I do think you have to remember to consider who it is who's talking when they give you an opinion is a lot of the times that you hear that the tier 2 scene is trash is on podcasts by, get ready, people who work exclusively at tier 1 lands. Right, come on, boys. Yeah, I can imagine why you might not. Essentially, if you already want to get your full slate of calendar is the ESL IEMs, the fucking blast events, and then all the majors or whatever, maybe you throw in the odd other event here and there, PGL and EWC. If you want that, yeah, you don't need any more tournaments, mate. To you even, you could argue it's a negative. Maybe you want all the events that exist that have the big teams there to only be the ones you work, so you were like embedded in the scene and you remember it all. I get why to them they don't like it as much. Also, there is the angle, like we say, it's probably, I agree, more like tier 3, but there's definitely the case where some of the companies that can get to the sweet spot of tier 2, tier 1.5 are the companies that unfortunately they can convince you they've got enough money to run the event and hire everyone, but maybe they never will pay you a la Yal Compass. There's also that fear, whereas the difference is, Messer obviously another one, the difference is if you look at any of the established ones, Blast, PGL, you never worry you won't get paid. It might be late or might be delayed, but there's never an imagination of like, I might end the event and I might just see online, like come online one day, oh, what's going on in the news? Oh, they've shut down the whole company, I'm never getting paid. You don't have that same fear. So I feel like that's part of why it'll seem like on these episodes, I'm just doing this disclaimer now, we're not just shifting our opinion to the guests. I mean, Maui even didn't fully agree there, totally, did he? So I will say, I do think there are some positives. Like, first of all, the obvious positive to me is this. Yeah, people are forgetting, I don't care who runs the LAN. I will always rather watch a LAN than an online tournament. So I had a real hard time, I have to say, not only watching online CS when it was COVID, but I have a really hard time watching CCT, unfortunately, because I've just seen too many teams. If people don't know, almost every tier 2 team that gets into the bottom of a major is some team that has murked the online scene for like 6 months. Like it'll be like the fucking Namigas of the world and the Monties and the Bates and all these teams. The problem is online, they will look like, maybe that's even better than like the 15th best team. But then the amount of times you then see them at the LAN and you're like, oh, fuck, they have to get the LANs in before they get that good though. Like they're not actually as good as they were in the online. So essentially to me, I have always been old school in the sense I don't really give as much of a fuck about online player. So I'm actually biased in this sense, in that TeaTime, that like, for example, I don't get hired by anyone, by the way. So right now, I love the fact that the official land's there. I think that official looks dope. There's loads of prize money. They have listen, maybe I don't like the talent as much. They should probably hire some bigger names there, but they've still got a few big names. Some people are able to do it. And actually, if no one saw, the team list of the last one was just all right. It had some good teams. This one's fucking mega. Like, you actually look at the lineup, that's like people like Falcons there, like some big name fucking teams. So I actually have interest in that in the same way as back in the day, the equivalent would have been, but just for less prize money, like a DreamHack Open or something, where you'd have like, the 7th best team or whatever might just go to one of those. You'd say, will they win it? Will they actually be the best team among the smaller group of people who can all prepare for them? So I do think there's some good aspects to it.
I do want to quickly point out something that Maui said, where you're talking about 2019, Maui. I agree that EPL, sure, it had a lot more teams, but at that point in 2019, it really did feel like, to what end though, right? Like it felt like, even if you're going to play in an EPL, like what are you going through afterwards? You're going to flunk out in the LAN finals if you make it there. There was 16 slots at the major, I think, back in 2019, maybe 24. I think it was 24, actually. And the major, like, sticker money wasn't as high and whatnot. It really does feel like now there's also a pathway to success. And it's not true that it's only based in Europe either. Like, Asia is the best it's ever been when it comes to LANs for Asia, right? There's the XSC League, there's the Ukilin League, there's ESN in Mongolia as well going on, right? Like there's a lot of really good small LANs in Asia. Asia is the best tournament scene we've ever had. I also think that North America should have an uptake based on just like me looking at it from the outside. If Philadelphia announces that they've sold out all of their like team passes or whatever you call it in 3.5 minutes, like you're probably going to end up having more of these Philadelphias, for example. And even if, maybe someone like a 6E would have been winning it in the past, I ask the same question, to what end? Obviously, it helps you sustain, but true. Maybe if you're going up against NIP, and even if you have, your team lose, but you're pulling up a dominant performance in these 4 NA LANs that happen every year, you're just kind of smurfing versus these European teams, you have a career path as an NA player even now. So yeah, I agree that there's definitely some failings compared to 2019 and whatnot, but I think overall, just in terms of having something to go towards and not just playing for the sake of playing, I do think this is still like probably the best year in my opinion.
I mean, the end is that there's organizational support for teams and players. I'll say for the players, it was probably better in 2019 because if you have 16 slots in ESL Pro League North America, you generally had 15 or even 16 orgs that would support those players. Today, what do we have for North American orgs? You have like 3, maybe. It's way worse. Like you have M80, NRG, and Wildcard today. I guess Liquid counts, but kind of barely because they were just looking overseas. But then back in 2019, you had so many orgs that some of them, you had legitimately so many orgs that people that probably never should have had salaries, like you had ATK, you had Envy. Like Envy was a team back then, okay? That probably never even should have existed. Yeah, United, there were so many. Singularity, I guess Singularity was probably smaller at that point, but that's still probably bigger than most of what's happening now. In Oceania, today you have FlyQuest and Semper Fi, if Semper Fi is even really an org.
I think.
And then back in 2019, you had Order, you had Renegades, you had 100 Thieves at the same time as Renegades. You had
Greyhound or someone, wasn't there? Wasn't that team?
Yeah, I think Greyhound, Chiefs was around then too. Like Atletico, there were all these orgs that were just like kind of hanging on, and then so the end is just that you would have a salary as a player. Is there more upwards mobility now in the space because of all the things you mentioned? I would say yes. I would say it's generally better for these players because they have to earn it as opposed to just being one of the teams that are gifted these slots. And it was this kind of, for ESL Pro League then, it was almost kind of like a version of affirmative action. Like we didn't really have 16 good teams of North American Counter-Strike that were going on back then. It was more like 7, and then they were propping up the whole league. But now we only have 3 that are decent. So the fact that we even had salaries for those 5th, 6th, 7th best teams in North America at the time made a stronger scene and led to tier 2 actually being propped up by that because they could scrim those guys more regularly.
Okay.
I could just get into my good point.
Yeah, let's go for yours.
Yeah,
go for
it. I like that one. That was a good angle on the usual ugly take. Okay, mine is that we've got another tournament with a group stage crowd. I'm glad to see that Chengdu is involving the audience for the opening stages of the games. I feel like this is always a good thing. It always adds gravitas to a tournament that otherwise would be interesting in the calendar, but wouldn't necessarily be as interesting to me. So I made a list recently of ranking tournaments in CS2, and I wasn't sure where I wanted Chengdu. I was going to put it kind of in this tier of tournaments that was kind of like Astana or Cluj or even London. But I think now Chengdu actually beats practically every other event in the IEM calendar. And I almost might just say period. It might actually be period the most important. It might be the most important event in the IEM calendar, with the exception of say Cologne and Katowice. And it's because having a group stage with a crowd is only reserved, generally speaking, to majors. I think there was one other tournament. I was trying to actually look it up before this podcast, but I couldn't quite find it. But I know that this was the biggest hit at Rio in 2022. It actually added a lot to that event from the get-go. And for Chengdu and obviously the Shanghai major had a crowd of, I think, a couple. I forgot whether it was
4,000 total, with one match having 3,000 and the other having 1,000.
Yeah. Okay. From the pictures, it didn't look that big because I looked back at it and it only looked like 2 rows of audience. So I'm not really sure where that number comes from. But looking at the picture, looking back at the footage, I'm kind of surprised it's in the thousands. But either way, it's pretty rare, but it is usually just reserved for the biggest tournaments. This gives China another huge event, though, which I think has already shown to be incredibly positive for the scene. There's been a lot more East Asian success recently, a lot more teams that have kind of popped up. And if IEM or any TO can continue to bring events to East Asia, I think that's incredibly good. And also, I think that having another elite tournament in the calendar is very good for the scene too. If Chengdu actually becomes the third kind of big event for IEM, I feel like that would really shake up the calendar in terms of just the priorities throughout the season. I know China's kind of a weird ask for a lot of teams to be, because of visa. It sometimes has visa issues, and I know like a few of the top teams aren't there. It's mostly Aurora is not there, but it's just that in general, this is a very cool aspect to a Chengdu event that I would have cared about. I would have had it above a handful of the other events in the season, but now I am forced to pay attention to it.
No, I mean, I fully agree with this, especially when I'm looking at the prices for the tickets, and they're actually decent prices, right? Like, so group stage tickets are costing between like $54 to like $96, depending on what kind of ticket you're buying as well. And considering it's also cheaper to run an event in China, people actually do show up and whatnot. I think this is even commercially just a fantastic thing to have added to a calendar when like every second day there's articles about how, oh, this company's having layoffs and this and that. It's nice to see people moving more priority to just monetizing some of the fans who actually want to pay money. So that's awesome, number one. Number two, I mean, I'm glad you brought up Rio because I still remember, I mean, this is one of my favorite matches of Counter-Strike I have ever watched, which was IHC versus whatever team Cold Zera was in at the time. And this was just a group stage match. It was so hyped because... 0-0 Nation, yeah. Okay. And like, because there was a lot of crowd cheating going on as well, but IHC was still winning out crazy clutches.
Oh, yes. This is from the major, yeah, the Rio major, right? Yeah.
And it's really awesome to be able to have moments like that for like smaller teams. I really think those are like defining moments to help build brands as well. One of the reasons why you're not going to see a team like Bait, for example, having as many fans is because even if like NPL has like a crazy clutch and maybe someone has like a funny line saying, oh, Nipple's done something, yada, it's not as epic without the crowd behind it. So it's just really great that we can both monetize and also build up legacy for some of these teams in ways that just isn't there otherwise.
Sure. By the way, I will say on this one, I actually do think this is quite cool because even though, like, here's the thing. The only real reason, if people don't know, why only arena events apply to the playoffs is just because of the costs of doing events. Like, basically, most events, especially in, like, major Western countries, lose money doing the events. Like, the arena part's the part that, even though you're selling tickets... I always tell people this. Think this through. If it's in the exact same venue that they have, like, pop singer concerts at, the pop singer concert ticket is like $200 and it lasts like 1.5 hours. If you come to the esports event, it is like $50 a day and you're going to be there for 12 hours. Like, you can't possibly make those margins work. Like, it's not even like they're just making crazy money necessarily in music. Like, they've just got all the margins. So essentially, a lot of actually doing the arena is almost for like the effect on camera. Like, it makes it look more legit. You have the cool crowd aspect. It makes it look professional to sponsors. Obviously, people can immediately get the sports analog. Oh, wow, it's people. But that's why they make it now quite cynical. It's why actually even people have moved to the 6-team playoffs instead of the 8-team, etc. And so basically, right now, in a weird way, even though it's a cost-saving measure, I think it at the moment has a value that it sort of also means if you're a pro, though, there's like, if you're like a lower team, it is almost a prize just to get to the arena. Like, the joke here is M80 just getting to play that group stage online, but then getting through and getting to the stage. We don't know if we'll see them in a stage playoffs again. To them, whether they won or lost, that's a big deal to get there. It's kind of like an extra mark in the same way as making the careers, a marker along, making the majors a marker in your career. This is a big deal. That part I think is cool, but at the same time, I do agree. The real problem is you get these fan bases, like China's one now, obviously the classic one is Brazil. You get these ones that are pretty good fan bases, where the problem you have is, like, I just think of Cologne. If people don't know, there are some really good, even though I don't like them when they tweet at me, at the event there are some really good fan clubs that do go along with fucking drums and like 50 people and they all arrange it and they're all super into it. And I've always thought it's the biggest bomber ever when like 50 people have bought a whole section of the stadium and then their team doesn't make it. And you're just like, fuck, they get nothing for that. Like, they didn't even get to watch a group stage game or anything, like nothing. Like that makes it, by the way, I will say, economically for team orgs really hard, because a massive part, I can tell you, in League of Legends about going to like the World Championship in League is the idea that like you can, even if you come last place, you can interact with fans and do engagement for do deliverables for the sponsors and activations and all these things. So I do think there are so many possible benefits if you can afford to run the event like this with the fans in the group stage. Like, you're going to get way more exposure for players. Like I say, more fan interaction. You can actually have more exposure. I think all that's great. Also, the difference now is this: in a world where other tournaments that are in theory good tournaments are running like for cost-saving measures online group stages, they're not even on the group stage on LAN. I think it's awesome that like there's one tournament going the other way. They're just trying to do like this one-off one. We're going to see if we can just do the whole thing in front of a crowd. I think it's kind of a cool experiment to run. And I'll even throw this out there. If you go back to 1.6, it was famous that Chinese crowds back then were terrible because, unfortunately, back then, they often wouldn't be Counter-Strike fans because that wasn't a big game there. Like, even when they played Counter-Strike, they play, like, Counter-Strike Online and Crossfire. There wasn't a lot of, like, CS 1.6 fans. So usually, you would be at an event that was a multi-game event, an IEM or a World Cyber Games, and really, those fans are probably there to watch League of Legends or Dota or Warcraft 3 or something. And so, unfortunately, that fan, essentially, when he's watching CS, is either someone who's just going to sit there all day and after the CS they're going to show Warcraft 3 and he's waiting for that. Or he's only a fan of Chinese players. And essentially, back then, Tai Lu was the best team. If Tai Lu gets knocked out, he might literally just leave the arena. And we've had famous scenarios where sometimes the finals or the semi-finals was almost empty. And you were like, what? And then it would be like the group stage that was full with the people there, because essentially they didn't give a fuck about watching, I don't know, Na'Vi play MIBR or something. That wasn't the match they were into. So back then the perception was, it's a bit like the Brazilian crowds at Rio. You better hope that the Chinese team makes it. Even though now we do have Tai Lu and then we have a bit of Lin Vision, we have these teams that are creeping in. Actually, I've noticed from Shanghai, there's something changed about the Chinese crowd. They actually do remind me of more of what I always give the compliment to Cologne, which is they're just CS fans, mate. In fact, as you saw at Shanghai, the most popular player was no one on fucking Tai Lu, it was Nico. Somehow it was actually Nico and like fucking, yeah, like that's on G2 at the time. That's who every fan was there for and screaming for. So I actually feel like there's been some development and maturation with the Chinese fans. They seem like actually legit good fan base as well. And as you see at those events, they get good crowd noise and they get into all the rounds. So no, I think it's actually pretty good now, mate. I'm actually kind of a fan of the Chinese events. It looks pretty cool.
And to be honest, the other thing is also to give more credibility to the fans. People like Machine and Sponge and whatnot even talked about how when they're in Chengdu, people are coming up to them and asking for autographs. Right. The idea that you're going to ask for an autograph from an English member of talent and a Chinese
remember,
fan,
they're not
right?
listening most of the time. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, like you compare that to like Astana for PGL, right? For example, where like Richard was talking about on his podcast that, hey, actually, I just got to walk around and no one knew me except for these 6 people, right? Yep. It's insane that China could have more cultural penetration of the English Counter-Strike scene than Kazakhstan, right? Like a region with actual major winners.
By the way, that is also true. 2 things. One, I'll actually tell you a little brief story myself. Here's a little detail. It'll sound edgy, Maui, but don't worry, it isn't edgy. It's just a normal story. Do you know back in the day, like 8-9 years ago, when Cloud9 had Automatic and Stewie on their team, Reddit would lose their minds if some like noob intern guy in the video editing at ESL accidentally wrote like Automatic on Stewie's portrait and then put Automatic, Stewie on Automatics because they're both Asian Americans and that person just, can't tell the difference. People would always do that thing where they went way too far and they went, the racism! Like, look, as a professional, just look up on the internet, mate, which, by the way, sadly, they might have done. They might have even just Googled Cloud9 Automatic and they've seen a whole team pick and one of those ones where the article shows you the wrong one on Google Images. Like that, to me, that's an honest mistake. But this is the point I want to make very briefly. It's also actually quite understandable because I can tell you, and this might shock you, I have had the same in reverse. I went to an event at the end of CS 1.6 in China. It was actually not in Chengdu. It was in a place called Hangzhou. And I went to this event, and because this wasn't even like Beijing, it was like some like massive metropolis. It's like some place at the time was like a developing city in China. They don't know any journalists and they don't know any commentators. They only know the players, right? Because they're listening in Chinese. And so at this event, a load of fans, anytime I would walk outside the venue to go get food, they would shout to me, "Grubby! Grubby! 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 It's Grubby! It's Grubby!" And by the way, just look up right now what Grubby looks like. The only similarity we have is the shade of our skin. That is it. Like Grubby, he has like, as far as I know, he has like fair hair, I think. His head, by the way, his dodge is way taller than me. He has totally different face. He has nothing similar at all. But the point is, when back then, there weren't almost any foreigners in China. I can tell you, when I would walk down the street, unironically, mothers would point with their little kid at me, like, look, holy shit, there's a white guy. That was real. Like, that was the thing back then. So I can tell you, when you just have no experience with people from a totally different culture who look different to you, actually, it's a human natural error to just people's faces blur to you. You can't quite make out what the distinction is. So I can tell you that has happened to me. So that is, by the way, that is massive. If in the modern day, people like Machine, who was just the fucking commentator, I agree that if they've got some like status there, that shows how far the game's come. It implies maybe they occasionally do watch the odd Western stream or ESL event or something. What are you going to say?
If you come to Pakistan, the same thing will happen to you as well. I'm just letting you know. It's either that or people are going to walk up to you and be like, "Do you know Donald Trump?" or something like that.
There you go. Oh, yeah, that's the other one. Yeah,
it's definitely true everywhere.
I also do love that. People have also asked me that, like when I was in Korea, like, "So where in America are you from?" I'm like, "Are you can you not hear what I'm You surely don't think I'm speaking in an American accent, but whatever. That's one of those things in it, I know. And then, so basically that's a massive level up if that's changed. Yeah, that's big time, mate. Also, that is just hilarious because here's the sad thing. If I knew that, though, I would actually try and plant some on Maui. Because here's what you really need to do. What would really fuck Richard off, because this happened back in the day, is you need to set someone up. You need to actually get a fan and go, listen, go up to Richard Lewis and say, like, hey, Anders, or whatever, that would tilt him way more than not being known. If you just thought he was somebody who he doesn't think, look, that would tilt him way more, bro. That would get him way better. Anyway, let's go on. So I actually have got a rare, this is going to shock you when you find out what my good point is. But actually, I will say there's a background and a little bit of homework for you here. My good point I'm actually going to pick is this story that Astralis is being sold, and it is being sold to a Danish guy, if you don't know, who's the head of this group, who, if people don't know, is the guy who was running Copenhagen Wolves many years ago. If you don't know, that's where Device came from. That's where zont1x was playing, and Dupree and all those people he used to love from the Astralis. And so if people don't know, this guy is about as old school as it gets in the Danish scene, at least from CSGO onwards. He was a person who, through his org, they brought up a bunch of people like Config, etc., came through Copenhagen Wolves. It used to be like one of the major Danish orgs at the end of Source and coming into CSGO. And as far as I know, this is why I picked it as a good point. I even saw Richard Lewis just wrote on his Substack a piece about this where he describes some of the history of this person. The reason why I think this is good is because that story is real that you've heard for the last, 3 to 6 months. Like, Astralis is in trouble. They're going to have to sell. By the way, no one even knew, can they actually secure the right owner? Like, by the way, there's also a world where, of course, they could have ended up owned by Middle Eastern people or Chinese groups or whatever groups people politically don't want to align with right now. But instead, it looks like they haven't. It looks like they're going to this person where it's actually someone where this is what I like. One of the reasons I never liked Nicola Nyholm and some of the other people in Astralis is what he has done now is exactly what I always thought he was doing. I always thought he's one of those people who, he's not in love with Counter-Strike. He just knows something about the esports space and has the connections. And his plan is, Counter-Strike is my stepping stone to whatever my next business venture is. I'm going to use this to build it up, to get connections with investors and stuff. I'm going to show I've run a successful business. And then as he did now, I'm going to wait. And if you don't know, when you go public with a company, guys, and it becomes a company with shares, they designed the system so you don't just actually have all your shares, because otherwise you could just leave that day, couldn't you? And the second it goes public, you do the IPO or whatever, you could just leave that day, sell all your shares, get loads of money and fuck off. But then the company would be ruined, wouldn't it? Like, everyone who invested thinking you're going to run that company. That's why they did it. So what they do, essentially, if you're a noob to in finance, is you have a thing called vesting shares, where it takes a certain number of years before you get all your shares. And I think the key number here was something like, I think when I looked it up, they had to have them for something like 5 years in Astralis before you could sell everything. If people don't know, I think the 5 years was up last year or something. So as soon as that happened, I was already CS is in a way harder place. And by the way, Astralis isn't as big a team, so they don't even have the same power to, negotiate, to run. If you don't know, behind the scenes, they sort of ran the players. The what do you call it? The fucking Paris Accord, I can't remember what it was called, the Louvre Agreement, there you go. They were the ones who ran all of that. They were the ones essentially doing the cartel of the teams. They had mad power in esports. There was one point where they were even expanded into League of Legends. They were doing all this, but I always knew they were going to go eventually. At some point in time, that guy's going to take what he's built with Astralis, he's going to cash it out, and he's going to fuck off and do something else. Probably not even in esports, if I had to guess. Probably just some general middle-level business shit he does elsewhere in the world. The difference is, this new owner, someone, is a real person from Counter-Strike. This is someone who clearly cares about the scene. By the way, it cares about Danish Counter-Strike. If you're a fan of Astralis, that should be huge. Astralis right now, if you haven't thought about it, if you're a fan, they are right on the line where if they can't make this roster and maybe one player change work, eventually you're just going to have to make it not Danish anymore. And that's just going to be the end of what you think of as Astralis. They're one of the last teams left that out of choice remains all national. Mongols don't have a choice. They have to have people who can speak Mongolian. Certain teams in Eastern Europe only want people who can speak Russian, etc. Astralis is a team where I think they're this close. If it doesn't work out, to just doing a Fury and just going, fuck it. We're not just only from this country. Look, we'll keep 3 players, but we're just going to take in probably the same thing. You get, in their case, maybe not the AWPA, but you get some shit hot CIS kid. You get some random kid from Middle Europe who plays for OG, and then this, that, the other. You've got a team, haven't you? I think at the moment, people do want that to maintain as a Danish team. They want the Launders racism angle of at least there's some national theme. I also do think as well, how fucking whack would it be for CS2 that when you tell a kid now who just started watching, Astralis was the greatest org of all time, and then they had this amazing and then they'd go, what? Well, there is no Astralis, and also there's no Danish. What are you talking about? That's what CS. I think it'd be shit if there was no connection to history. So I like the idea. I still think this Astralis core. Look, we'll see with this fucking Vegas condition, but I still think you could still pivot this core to potentially be a relevant team that's good and is fun to watch, and a Huxley style can work, etc. So I actually think in general, I don't see any downside to this. It looks like a good move. It looks like you're keeping it within Denmark. You're keeping it with someone who even has connection to people like Device. It's someone who comes from Danish Counter-Strike, the actual grassroots of Danish Counter-Strike. I think that's I'm picking, this is my good point, Astralis new owners. I've turned over a new leaf. I'm actually a fan of Astralis ownership now. Who knew? What do you think, TeaTime?
So one of the things that I really like about this change of ownership in particular is when I wasn't when I just didn't make enough money casting, I did a fair bit of consulting in like Pakistan and the Middle East for people who were trying to become TOs who were like from the corporate world before. So, something similar to what Nicola and IHOM is, but on a smaller level. What I hate is that every single time these guys are getting in, they're just like, oh, but like, because of the assumption of eternal growth, they're just like, oh, hey, we can also like add in this vertical and that vertical. And from what I understand, I think Astralis did do some of that. Now, I've never been to Denmark for more than half a day or something, so I don't know about this that much. But from what someone told me that they had like this gaming sphere or something that was really like massive prime real estate in the middle of Copenhagen, which is already a very expensive city. And they're doing all of these things like, oh, you can have like an academy and like, oh, there's a boot camp that no one's using because obviously who the hell is going to boot camp in Denmark, right? Unless there's an event in Denmark, and all these extra costs that were just being added on because they had the money. And it's like, oh, eternal growth means we have to make a new vertical while we have this money. There's no saving for a rainy day with corporate people because they're just used to having to satisfy someone above.
Yes.
And the issue that makes is that if your CEO is always looking for eternal growth, the middle management who are making the real decisions on the ground, they have no choice but to go towards that, right? So you always have to do something that could be destructive to the company come 3 years from now, even if you know it. But because your CEO is some guy who's only worked in corporate all his life and he doesn't know that, you either get fired and replaced by someone who will do that, or you eventually just stop moving up the pecking order. People stop caring about you. That's what happened every single time I was consulting with these companies. And I said, hey, guys, probably just focus down on this, double down on this first, maybe grow what you already have instead of growing into like horizontally. And I hated this. And I do like the idea that maybe Astralis will be a little bit more responsible if they do get success, right? Like they're hopefully going to make it to the major right now. They're probably not going to use that major money to expand into like another few deals or another real estate thing or like a big rental agreement or something. So that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to as an Astralis that can actually run potentially. That'd be pretty cool. Like we could have like a big boy end situation coming out of this.
My only concern is the Jonas Gunderson aspect of this. With him being brought in, also, I can see why you're positive about the other guy, but Jonas Gunderson was there at NIP from 2020 to 2024, and that is the infamous "your time doesn't count" era of NIP. With the exception of the device pickup, I don't think there was really a single positive aspect when looking at the body of work of NIP at that time.
Sure.
I mean, but they didn't even.
Here's the problem. The problem is this, Maui, right? It's like, I might one day do a video just on that guy, because believe it or not, it's like, it would be the ultimate ugly topic, actually. Because essentially, if you ever look without looking at what the roster is, mate, he had an amazing run of rosters, but like he signed Alexi B, Device, he had Brawlat, mate, he had some fucking bangers. The problem is not all at the same time. So, like, that sounds awesome, except like when the monkey paw curls up, you never get them in the actual roster at once. And as a result of the device drama, which he allowed to continue, apparently, this might be ugly, it just lasted forever. And then the famous story goes, and this is real, that at one point when they had like most of that roster, and then they said basically to this guy, just sign Brolan and like all the players, and I promise we'll be really good. He was like, good news, I've signed Essetag. And they were like, what the fuck? Like, and yeah, so like it's even one of those, we've got fucking Brolan at home and it's Essetag, like price tag, the most notorious check stealer of all time. By the way, he must for real have done the cursed monkey paw too. I just want to be on a load of really good teams, make loads of money. You'll never be a top player or any good, right? Oh, fuck, ruin my whole career. No, it's true though. Yeah, look, I skipped over that part because listen, it's the good point, Maui. I can't shade in some negativity. I just have to hope that works. But I'm with you. He is the main architect of what people don't like about an IP. True.
The good part is that despite all of the hate watching that has gone on for Astralis over the last year or two, it still is a legacy organization that, in my eyes, should still stick around. I don't want to see these kind of organizations fold.
No.
So I would never want to see NIP or Fnatic go away, even if they're in.
I always say this, Maui. The thing people miss, I mean, we all do it. Like right now, I'll give you an example. We all love watching Team Spirit play, but they don't have a very long history in Counter-Strike as an elite team. Like it's mainly just people like Donk that have done all that. If you think of it right, in sports, it wouldn't work if we were starting with fresh franchises all the time. You need to have that history, and the problem is, like you say, especially Astralis, Fnatic, Nape, SK, if they ever came back. These teams have a long history. Like, it's why, in a weird way, I'm surprised more newer orgs don't just like do like a name branding deal with an old org and get their fucking name and connect it to like MIBR style. That's a perfect example. Like, I actually think you need the history like that, mate. It matters.
Yeah, Yeah, it does. It keeps people around. I mean, it keeps the old fans coming back for. Sometimes you just need any sort of thread between now and then, and if you give people that to grab onto, then they'll continue to be fans and support the space.
Okay. Now, I like the sound of the Astralis owners, but I'll tell you what I like even more. And that is obviously these wonderful Raycon headphones, isn't it? Earbuds, there you go. They are literally called earbuds, because it says they're everyday earbuds classic. By the way,
great box.
I will say, a little bit self-indulgent to call your own product classic. That's normally what other people call something after a long time when it's become established. But whatever, listen, it's all nice to write our own reviews. I am the esports historian. Fuck anyone who says otherwise. So, speaking of being the best, enabling yourself the best, Raycons are really good. They have really good min-max on the price for the quality. Also, they actually do look quite cool. They don't look fucking like some old school shit where you wear like a 90s Walkman. They actually look stylish, like everyone wants, with all different colours. They have the mint green and all different. I just normally pick the black ones, I'm going to say, but whatever. I'm not trying to flex on people in the gym or on the bus or commuting or at work, or if you're studying in study hall, whatever you fucking call it in America. We just call it the library in English, but whatever, it's all good. If you
just say the library,
yeah, it's all good. Whether you're doing all that crap, point is, Raycon's there for you, and they've got the amazing. Not what do you call it? Active noise cancellation, which is obviously a feature a lot of people want with headsets. They've got also on this one multi-point connectivity, so you can actually connect and pair with two devices at the same time, which is obviously awesome. And they have the ergonomic fit to them. Up to 32 hours of battery life. Quick charge takes 10 minutes to do 90 minutes worth of charge. So I always tell people it means if you don't actually forget to charge them the night before, assuming you're not going on like a 3-hour road trip, all you need is 10 minutes. As long as you've got 10 minutes before you go out the door, quickly set it on while you have a coffee or something, and then you'll still be good, at least for that trip, for your commute, for whatever it is, take the bus, wherever you're going. So if you would like to support us and get some money off some wonderful Raycon earbuds, why not go to buyraycon.com/snake, easy to remember, and you will get 20% off site-wide today. That's buyraycon.com/snake to get 20% off site-wide today. Buyraycon.com/snake. They just ask you to repeat it multiple times. Anyway, let's go on now. So, TeaTime, what is bad at the moment? What don't you like in CS at the moment?
Quickly, 32 hours is insane, by the way. I didn't
know. Pretty good, yeah.
Like these last for like 5. I get very upset about that.
Sadly, by the way, that's where I actually am a real boomer. Like, part of me's like, how do they accomplish this magic of, wait a minute, 90 minutes, but I only charged it for 10. Like, yeah, I am on that shit, you know. I don't really understand how that works still, you know. I don't really understand how when I download the movie, it downloads in 1 minute. It's like, what the fuck? You're not going to watch that. It's all good. I believe it. I believe I've seen it work. It does work. I've used it. Go on then. What
as
do you
long
like?
as you can witness the black magic, that's fine.
Don't worry about it.
Bad in Counter-Strike for me right now is, unfortunately, I actually think that tournament organizers, and I'll try to put more of a tier 2 spin on this, but also sort of lean into tier 1 a little bit. I think tiers are taking the broadcasts of all products between like tier 1 and tier 2 for granted, and you're seeing like a really massive drop in quality and investment being put in. And first of all, I'll give a bit of background for using another esports title that I know a little bit about, very little, but just a cursory overview. In League of Legends, you know, Europe is a worse region than like the Asian regions. Now, I watched a lot of the content they did because I was trying to figure out, because obviously I'm like an expert in Asian Counter-Strike. I think I'm probably the #1 expert right now on Asian Counter-Strike in the world, in my opinion. Because I've been doing a lot of this coverage over the past 5-6 years, and I tried to figure out how do you make people interested in Counter-Strike, which might not be the best level. And what they were doing was they were putting out all these awesome, like, you know, narrative pieces. They're really going hard on like team building and world building sort of around the space. And I saw that bleeding into Counter-Strike as well. And it did really well. Now, what they did in Europe is, for cost cutting, as far as I'm aware, they just stopped doing a lot of those content pieces. They stopped doing a lot of that. They stopped like letting talent be as involved in a lot of ways, because that meant they had to pay them more and whatnot. And because of that, now you see sort of that decline hitting 3 years later. I feel like I'm seeing that in Counter-Strike now, and it's going to hit in 3 years, right? Like things like the reduction of the number of people who are working Cologne, and, you know, going back to more online broadcasts, going back to, you know, maybe not hiring the best people for your maybe second best event or so. And beyond that, you're also not enabling, I think, the content creators around the space to work with you effectively, right? Like the only creators who actually get access, and understandably so, are HLTV confirmed and HLTV, right? Like beyond that, you don't really have much access. It's very hard to get into these places. And what I always remember is back in 2018, I went to an ECS, I think it was season 5 in London. This was the one that Furia lost to Vitality in the finals. I did that as press. And one of the things that FaZe's PR company, which is Swipe Right PR, was doing back then was they actually had remote press access. So they put a laptop down in the press room, and anyone who wanted to do an interview with the player could just call them on Discord over through that laptop. And they gave like dedicated slots to that. So you could build content really effectively. You could do like post-match interviews and stuff really effectively. You can like put that into a YouTube video.
It's comparable basically to what Donna does for Onipixel in that sense, right?
Exactly. Right. And instead, it's a PR company doing it, right? Which is already managing things. You just need to put 2 laptops down and connect them to calls. That's literally.
But they get the players for you and bring them to you and all that shit.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. And Alan Hender, funnily enough, actually did a lot of his initial YouTube videos on that. That's when I first met Alan as well. And that's how you got like these really interesting content pieces coming out over there as well. I'm not very good at content creation because like I suck at editing and all of these things. But if I had access to something like that, I know I'd be on literally every single event for post matches, for interviews, anything you can get. The amount of content you can put out would grow massively. Even when it comes to tier 1 talent, I've talked to a few people, and the feedback I get is like, hey, we're just not being given the resources, which might be false. I'll be honest. I always doubt the amount of work talent are willing to put in, being someone who works in broadcast myself, because it's obviously tiring. It's exhausting. Sometimes you just don't want to do more. But it does feel like we're stepping slowly away from making sure that the prestige of Counter-Strike is maintained. And that will start to fall. It's just we won't see it now. And now I'm going to go from tier 1 to sort of tier 2, and I'll tell you why that's important as well. Maui, Thorin, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but open up like an ECL North America Wikipedia page, or open up like a CCT Wikipedia page. There's like 12 casters casting every single tournament. It's just not good, because what that does is there are no more specialists. There's no more like regional aficionados. You don't have people who know everything about like a particular bracket of teams. You also, like, all these casters do not care, because you're not given enough matches to care about a tournament most of the time. And this is also self-indulgent, right? Because if there's fewer casters being hired, I obviously get paid more money and whatnot, because I feel like I'm one of the upper echelon of tier 2 right now, fortunately, for whatever reason. But it does feel like where 8 years ago for me, you looked at who's doing like the ECLs, you see your Harry, Hugo, Scrawny, Tombiz, Mishpan, all these people who you're like, okay, these 5 to 6 people, and then like it sort of became me and Scriv and Bok and like Darth Mike, like all of us sort of did make it to a level above, and then we brought in unique things, right? Like I was the Asian expert. Darth Mike is obviously the North American expert. That's how he comes forward. You're missing now expertise on the tier 2 level that will not translate to tier 1. You will not have this sort of knowledge feedback. And now in tier 1, you're missing the promotion of prestige. So not only are you missing out on specialists, you're also missing out on the grand narrative building that Counter-Strike once had. And it does feel like if this is the pathway we're on, in 3 years, we're going to see a massive dip in like broadcast appeal and the amount of people who give a shit, frankly.
Okay.
Good point. I'd just say that the big problem with esports and it's just conflicting in nature. Think about what has made some fringe sports work. I mean, Drive to Survive. Last Dance isn't a fringe sport, but it's so alluring, and it's what made the Valve player profile so legendary, is that the vocal minority of Redditors, which sadly shape how TOs make decisions, will always lie to the TOs and themselves, and they say they want nerdier content, they want more stats, more breakdowns, and no one actually wants any of that. And no one even remembers any of that that's being said. They want nicknames, they want jokes, they want ideas that are easy to grab onto, and the people that can actually provide those are the people that are in the depths of tier 2 that watch the journeys of some of these guys as they come up, because really in an interview it's pretty hard to get that sort of, it's hard to extract that. I try to paint some picture of Heavy God and of his come up and why his story is so cool, that he was IGLing before Endpoint, goes on Endpoint, is successful, joins, OG, is the best player clearly on that team, then switches to speaking Russian, and he's changing spots, he's changing positions, he always has a great attitude, and I don't think I think people would like that more, and the fact that he has an incredibly positive outlook on everything that's going around him. All of this is much more interesting to me than, hey, look at the way he angles himself in this off angle as the exec comes in and turns away from the flash every time. It's like, just people just don't actually care about that, despite what they say. And we have a more hardcore audience on this show, and most of the podcasts in general are generally speaking to a more hardcore audience. But I mean, with the Do Not Peak Productions, Yanko, myself, and Anders made that series, The Double Scope, where we made these really thorough breakdowns, great editing, as good as anything you'll still see today on breaking down strategies, styles, what makes a player good or unique. And no one fucking watched it. No one cared at all about this stuff. But look at what's popular today. It's stuff that's easily consumable. People would rather watch... like Launders, I think, realized that the content that makes the most sense time investment to viewership wise is just big narrative, big takes, and just speaking to the camera, personality.
And he even does that thing for the Zoomers with like footage in the background that might not even connect to what you're saying, so the Zoomer brain can watch. He does it all, yeah.
I mean, my editor does that now. I just told him to get the highlights.
Yes.
Just get the highlights of these things, and whatever I talk about, just play that in the background. And if he finds good stuff, great. But if he finds just anything, I'm also okay with that. And then even look at the biggest content creator today. I mean, in terms of success, the biggest content creator today is not Vu or even like a War Owl type necessarily that's going to like the nerdier, this is how you play the game. It's Fi. Like Fi is just he just dominates with narrative driven big stories. Not even always it's not like what he's saying is objectively correct about the characterization of these teams, but because he just decides to take an angle and go in on it, he plays it up, and then people like it. People watch it, and it shapes perspective so much more. And so that's kind of a push that I've lightly had behind the scene, where I just think that I would like for desks and to just instead of getting a guy that can say what the strat is and the numbers behind it, I'd rather get the guy that actually watches tier 2 every single day of his life. And I'd rather get that guy that can then say, ooh, by the way, the new pickup for Virtus Pro is XYZ. He actually came from this team, and he actually had a bad problem with his attitude, which is what got him kicked from his last 2 teams. Like, I want the guy that has been in the weeds now, instead of the guy that has a general overview presentation, which is palatable but isn't actually nuanced.
Okay. I see the angle, but it's also a unique angle, I will say. Well, there's a bunch I can go into on this. So first of all, I actually do agree with, even though it might seem like the more abstract one, the point you made about like they have limited access for people to do content creation unless you literally essentially work for ESL or Blast or whatever, or you're HLTV. And as you point out, if people don't know, HLTV will always have a specialized privilege at these events because they also do run a lot of the shit for the events and they run the HLTV stuff. So they're sort of like essential. And that's just a concession you're going to give them. It's like, yeah, you can have a hall to run HLTV confirmed in or whatever, or you can just get extra press access that other people don't get. Back in the day, even before there was like a massive streaming culture, because they used to run the HLTV servers, they were the only journalists when you used to have like restricted tournament areas who could just walk into the tournament area. So guess what? Their photos were 100 times better because they were this close to Neo, whereas I had to like zoom in over a fucking like a almost the equivalent of like the VIP rope that keeps the pleb out, you know. So even if you were a famous person back then, you didn't have that access. They just had it because they did it. So one thing I've suggested on other shows, even though yes, it's obviously self-serving, is I actually think something people have missed is, you know, when I said earlier that if you go to an event, you pay your $50 for the day or whatever, and you get like maybe 12 hours of entertainment. But the problem is, it is just matches. And I always do think like, that must be hard if you don't care about one of the matches, for example. Or just to watch like 4 matches in a row might just be like really tiring. It's sort of, like in sports, I don't sit down and watch 4 different matches. I watch the team I care about play a match. And then, like I might want, you know, the pre-show and the post-game show. And I want it to be 3 hours, but I want one part of it to be that. And I want to the experience. That's what we don't cater to right now. I actually think that's an area of the live experience that is lacking. Like the part I'm going to say that self-serving is, just like HLTV confirmed, I'm not trolling. I actually think for events, it would be a clever idea to collab with with podcasts. Like, by the way, it could be like Snake and Banter. Essentially, by the way, we sort of just did that for the ESL Masters desk, but you could have had at one of these shows, you could literally make that like your post show. By the way, think about for Flashpoint, we had like the blind spot where it was sort of like a live podcast environment where it was a post show. We would bring on a player who's won or lost the game. Similarly, in the past, Parler used to do one of the majors. I remember like a post game show where I think you could have both as a warm up if you wanted. You could have like talking counters, you warm up if you want, by the way, to like set the narratives, or you can have a post show again where a guest is a player. I feel like that would also add to the viewer experience if I went there live. Like, that would be dope if I'd start the day with like talking counter, then I watch 2 big matches, then there's a whatever, maybe this is the day where it's only 2 playoff series. At the end of the day, even if it's 2 quick 2-0s, I get to watch another show. Could be, it doesn't have to be my shows, obviously, it could be some other fucking show that people like out there. I think actually that's the sort of stuff that people care about almost as much as the games, as long as it's not the biggest match. Like, I think people do care about the narratives and the stories. As you say, that it is the sort of 4 documentary type footage that hits way harder in terms of hits. Like, that won't just be more, Maui. That'll be 10 times more views than like amazing strat breakdown. Like, even though people glaze Ash, even an Ash video can't come close viewership wise to what one of these like mini documentaries does if you hit the right topic. If it is like, this is the Counter-Strike team that broke the meta. If you do some shit like that and you do it right, yeah, that can get 100k views. Ash couldn't get 100k views if he literally broke down the secrets right now to be the best team in the world. Like, people would just say they watched that video, or they'd thumb it up and like it. And I don't believe half of you ever get through the fucking video. I think you all say you want to, you tune right out of that so quick. Especially, by the way, when he does what you say you want him to do. He's just hitting all the hard terminology of the game, right? Oh, they need to like split the map here. But you don't, your eyes glaze the fuck over and you just go, show me a crosshair and show me don't shoot someone in the head. That's what you all watch at home. Or you want to watch Skip Bayless, you want to watch the fucking podcast, you want to watch Gilbert Arenas have the wrong opinion, and you want to watch some old school players, yeah, I could be the best today, and then some new school players, oh, the old players are all shit. That's what everyone wants. Everyone wants drama and personalities and entertainment, basically. So I do think that aspect is massively slept on. Then when it comes to the talent part, I also think they did, I had a similar take, but I was going to go from a different angle, but I actually like your angle of like an expert, a specialist, because what I was going to say is, I think they go completely the wrong direction with the talent hires. They either spend as much budget as they can and basically say, just get me the people who do ESLs, then by cargo cultism, something, I'm ESL, which is like, well, that doesn't work. Also, I've got some bad news from knowing these people. A lot of them literally are phoning that event in, by the way, bro. They don't give a fuck about your tier 2 LAN, where the best team there would be last place at the real LANs they work at every month. Like, I'm sorry, they will appropriately reserve some energy and not be as engaged with your event. So what I would do if I were them, or they go the other way. The other way is we've already spent all the money lying and saying we have the prize money, so we haven't got any money for talent, so just hire whoever can work the event for the minimum possible. The problem I don't get is there's an obvious sweet spot in between, which I'll tie in your point. Here's how I would hire, as someone who has hired for events. I would hire either one casting duo or one analyst who is a tier 1 person, but the person who, from actually getting a relationship with them, seems like they'd be into my event too. Maybe, by the way, they have their own bias to want that region of teams to come up, or they like to support, maybe there's some of the people who actually just like to support tier 2, they're not just an elitist. I'd have a big name like that to draw you in, and that's familiar, but then I would intentionally make the other people either the next casting duo or the other analyst, the other 2 analysts. I wouldn't then just go budget. I would go budget, but with a plan, with an intention, which is I would pick someone who I think could one day be a top talent, and I'm going to get them now, and I'm going to build them on my brand. That's this. If people don't know, this is how Launders came up. He used to just be the random caster that did the group stage games in all the like Starlands, then go fucking home while we all did the playoffs. He came up because of Blast and COVID. That's what his brand was associated with, and now he's at the top of the game. So I agree with you. The other angle is you can either go development angle or just get a specialist, because I agree with you. You can never ever beat it. It's actually what makes, in my opinion, League of Legends dog shit to watch when the World Championship happens. You go to the finals and you're like, oh boy, I can't wait to watch this Chinese team play a Korean team. The casters who cast the game are the people who were sat in fucking North America casting the North American teams the whole year, and one European guy basically. And the joke is, even though this is why it's a good analogy, obviously before the final they're going to board up and do all their homework. You can never match being the guy who was there in the other region casting the game though, or studying the game. So you can, here's the thing, obviously if Yanko had 3 hours to study some demos, he could give some really amazing insight on like Tai Lu. He'll never be as good in terms of broad knowledge, though, and storylines as someone who was from the Chinese scene, someone who watched Tai Lu like for the last 5 years and knows every player's history. By the way, ideally, these people would even be insiders in the scene who know the players. They can tell you stuff about Mongols or some fucking Australian player or whatever. Brazil, another obvious one we probably should have had years ago. That's why actually I saw the angle. Bigger than people like Peter had an angle to it. That guy could have actually added value we didn't have. So no, I'm with you. I actually think that is an underrated part. Obviously, you don't have to have everyone be like that, but I think you need at least one because they can bring valuable information the rest of us just don't have. And then what was the other? Oh yeah, and then the other thing was also, I also agree. I'll give you a little bit of inside baseball here. The skits one is the one that's really hard because you have to realise when we started it at Flashpoint, it was COVID. So first of all, you had nothing to do anyway. You had nowhere to go. You were trapped in the building, and also it's just a fun creative outlet, isn't it? And people might not know this. But at the time, one of the visions of Flashpoint was, we're not just hiring you like a mercenary cynically. Ideally, if it goes well, you're going to be with our brand and we're all going to grow together. So also, people had a sense of like, I am invested in this. I want this to be really good. I can tell you one of the problems, TeaTime, which goes like this. You know, now everyone loves all the ESL skits, where they just do these movie skits. Everyone wants more of them. I can tell you behind the scenes, one of the problems is, ESL's a fucking super faceless corporate company that doesn't give a fuck about people. So eventually, if you're those talent, you're not just doing that for free forever. They're not your mates. You want to get paid eventually. You want to, like, I want that to be part of my fee. And that's part of the issue I've heard is that when it was just like, hey, we'll give you some cameras and go crazy. Yeah, when it's free, they will let you do that. The problem now is they have to acknowledge that it has a value beyond just like fun and that it's worth paying the casters to do. So there's been a little bit of back and forth there as far as I know. But I do think almost every event that's more than like 2 days, just use your media day. Remember, on the media day, the talent don't do anything. It's just players do interviews. That's when your talent can record a bunch of skits or podcasts, by the way. I saw actually Maui did one recently at this, what was the tournament? Was it Fisher that you did, where you did the one where you were on like some podcast that was was it EWC? What am I thinking of, Maui? You were on this show with Henry G and Dinko or whatever.
That wasn't related to an event.
Really?
When I was at Blast Bounty, that was their Bitcoin. I'm not going to even say the name.
Oh, fair enough. Oh, well, anyway, I missed that part there. I actually thought it was branded from the trio. Because, by the way, if you're a TO, I think that's a very good idea. Get 3 talent together and just tell them, basically, like, look, I'll give you like an hour's day rate or whatever. Like, just do a podcast for me. I think that's a great setup, yeah.
That's just a website that
fair enough.
wants to get into Counter-Strike. And then so they sponsored Dinko and Henry to do X amount of episodes, and they're just seeing how it does for now. But yeah, I mean, I think the ones that ESL did with Sponge and different players.
Oh, the roundtable ones, yeah, those are good, yeah.
Yeah, the roundtable ones, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's really simple, too. You just set aside 2 hours for everybody, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, we get paid for the media days anyway, like half day rates for context anyone is watching. And like most of the time, it is just like, yeah, show up, speak something into the microphone for 30 minutes, and then, you're good to go. Which is like, hey, I'm not complaining, but also at the same time, I wouldn't mind doing more stuff, especially, I am tier 2. I would like my brand boosted and whatnot too. But like, just to sort of summarize, I also think, Thorin, that we don't have to make it like a dichotomy of like, hey, only narrative or only like, deep diving stuff. The issue is like, you can have all these narrative content, like, for example, the stuff you do with like the donk piece and whatnot. Like, you can have all this stuff coming out from your ESL, but then at the same time, if you're giving access to all of these tier 2 people who are trying to differentiate themselves as specialists and are trying to build up content on like the analytical side of things, give them access to the players so they can have those personal relationships, so they can have those interviews, they can ask those questions, build that into their content, and then you've actually got a system going on. Right now, there's no attempt to have that system at all.
No, by the way, this is a very wide open topic. As you can imagine, there's a lot of things that can and could be done. So I agree, it's a good wide open one. Right, Maui, where are we going? What's bad at the moment, mate?
Mine's pretty simple. Just FaZe Clan. Just FaZe Clan. It's just pissing me off.
Was Elise the problem? But look at the T-side numbers, man. Like,
I know. I feel like
please get me out.
Just this team is just. I mean, I made on Hot Take Point made the take already that this is Reigns' last season because I just don't see that. I mean, they're gonna try to get him to 10 years. Okay, they're gonna try to get him to 10 years, which means that he needs to play until January of next year. So, but if I really am being honest with how this team looked, it was basically the Brokey show. Frozen being as clutch and good of a late round player as he always been, but come on, like I think Kerrigan and Rain are still well beneath what you need to be a consistently elite team. I think it's fair to say finally at this point that like Kerrigan is very weak per role now. He's like a C. He's kind of entered that like B- tier of in-game leader for me, where his in-game fragging is completely fallen off a cliff. It's like I can't even really say to you in seriousness when's the last pop-off game he has, because he used to be good for that. Okay, back in 2023 or 2024 even, you would get maybe 1 out of 5 maps. You could just get this one, wow, vintage Kerrigan just got all the entries, was able to do so much for him, and now you're just almost like, when is it not going to be a red rated map, versus an actual top 10 team? It's just incredibly rare for that to happen. For Rain at this point, it's just, I think at the discussion that we had at the Blast London event was that I just don't think you can have both. I don't think you can have Rain and Kerrigan on the team at the same time. Maybe we even had that conversation on Hot Take Point Made also. I just don't see how FaZe gets themselves out of being what are they right now? The 10th ranked team. They're not breaking into top 5. They're just not going to break into top 5 with this roster. I would even be shocked if they break into the top 7, top 8. I feel like the likelihood that they're even making it to a playoffs in every tournament, as long as it has some assembly of 5 of the top 10 teams, like it's just almost based off of bracket draw at this point. It's just it seems so rare for them. Like, you're just not going to get any sort of sustained success with this roster. And so in general, there's a million ways you could take this one. But for me, FaZe are in a really bad position, and I don't see it improving with this 5-man lineup.
Yeah, so I just checked, and FaZe, since the major, have beaten a top 10 team once, which was Aurora, and I'm only counting on LAN, which was Aurora at Cologne. They've also lost to Na'Vi like 1 million times, which feels like one of the more beatable top 10 teams as well, especially when you're thinking, hey, they don't really have like that superstar player who's just going to overpower you individually and whatnot. Obviously, Jacob's been brought in the meanwhile and whatnot as well. I agree with you on the Rain and Kerrigan angle. The only sort of thing, maybe this is copium, I quite like Kerrigan.
Oh yeah, by the way, also, I just looked it up. The match that they won over Aurora was when Xantares wasn't there.
Yes, of course. I actually didn't check that one.
No, just looked up.
So they haven't.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ,
that's bad.
So they basically haven't won against a top 10 team basically all season long. So obviously alarm bells are like massively ringing and blaring right now. And the only copium I have for Kerrigan, like on his individual form, is now that Simple's not there, now that Elige isn't there, Frozen's a quiet guy, Brokey's a quiet guy. I don't know how much Rain can do as far as secondary calling. He's obviously having to shoulder a ridiculous amount of the calling burden compared to, maybe like a year ago, where in 2024, you're saying he's having a few of these vintage performances. You don't have Rob Sarah. Who's actually giving you your secondary calls? That's sort of my only copium that I come in with. And I do think the burden on him is just getting higher and higher. Like, look, man, you've been able to rehabilitate Brokey. Good job. I don't know how much of that was you, how much of that was him. Jacob's not it, right? Like, he just really isn't it. I don't think he's going to be doing very much. I don't think he's going to be making his way into fitting into a top 10, even a top 20 team, the way things are going. And Kerrigan's famously been able to get players to that really fast. So I don't even buy into the idea that he just needs more time, for example. So I do just sort of ask the question, like, hey, who do I need to bring in to get Kerrigan maybe to actually be held accountable in some ways, but also in other ways to at least give him like a real shot at things? Because I can't imagine he's going to be having a good time having to rehabilitate a player, having to teach a player, and having to, like, I don't know, give Rain some stem cell therapy or something to get his strength back to where it was before. So it's a lot on his shoulders, I will say that. But yeah, FaZe, it's just a broken team, and that sucks because, more on this later on, but it just feels like you need to have a FaZe in the scene, right? Like, you want to have a FaZe, you want to have a Na'Vi, you want to have a Liquid, and all three of these teams are just a kind of ass, and that just sucks. And you're not going to see them get better. That's the worst part. They are stuck where they are in this season. They're not going to be a dark horse. They're not going to be an upset candidate. They're probably not even like a series upset candidate. At best, they'll get like one map and get like a map to overtime, and you're going to think, oh my God, is this possible? And it won't be. And then I'll just be sitting sadly while I watch them lose.
No, by the way, I'm with you. If people haven't noticed, I'm actually low-key a FaZe hater now. I actually sort of pray on their downfall. And the reason why is I don't even have to pray particularly fucking hard. It's just real, innit? Like, it's not something that I hope happen. It's just reality, and I've just been forced to accept it. The real problem is this. it's funny that FaZe themselves attempted to use that narrative when they signed Jacob instead of Elige, of almost the Maui vibes angle of like, hey, you didn't feel like FaZe Clan. Or does this feel like FaZe Clan? Does this feel like fucking FaZe Clan? Where you can't ever beat any good team, and the second you step on a stage, I know you are going to be stepping off it at the end of that day, not to return. That's not FaZe Clan. FaZe Clan was about the idea that, like, it doesn't matter. Think of the Shanghai is the ultimate example of FaZe Clan. That was when they weren't even a top team anymore. Before that, for most of the time of the previous 3 years, they were like at least top 4. You know, they were always like good. Maybe they didn't win events, but they'd be like relevant to the playoffs. The cool thing about FaZe is the idea that the normal events in the season don't matter. If you get them to that Cologne, that Katowice, that major, and they somehow, by hook or by crook, sneak into the playoffs, every team there hopes they don't draw them. Because that's the team that might do, like they did at Shanghai, a miracle run and just knock. Remember, that people forget this. They not only almost beat Vitality, G2 and Spirit back to back in a row, those were all the fucking contender teams in the world. Those were all the teams that are supposed to win the event. That's FaZe Clan. It's not even about if you do it. The reason everyone loved the simple lineup is from the group stage when they beat Mongols. By the way, that aged awesome now. Mongols went to the fucking final. That made you think, holy shit, maybe they can make a finals run. Even though this lineup again shouldn't do it. That one really shouldn't. It was a brand new roster. Never played an event together before. You look at it. That's FaZe Clan essentially is like playoff magic. That's what the identity of the team is. And the problem you have is this. Not only as that just doesn't exist right now in the team and they can't play to that level, they've just lost so much in the game. But then you also add in factors like, if we start to make roster moves, notice how all we're doing is gambling even more iconic FaZe aspects are removed without ever adding a guaranteed one that fixes that problem. So if you take those two players, I agree, Maui. To me, I said this about Chopper and Magix, it's so obvious you have to pick one. So if you think Chopper's the real guy in Spirit, I don't care how wonderful Magix is, great team maker, there can only be 2 giga low fraggers, so one has to go. So if you choose Magic, okay. In this case, that's why you're fucked if you FaZe. Because who are the 2? Mr. FaZe. There's Rain because he was always there, and he's iconic. And by the way, another player that steps his level up when you put him in a stage game, etc. But if you keep him and kick Carrigan, now you're not FaZe either, mate. There's all the genius 28th round call, all the fucking, oh my God, are you entertained? You're not going to have that. If you bring in any normal caller now, they're not guaranteed they can ever play like FaZe did, and they won't have any of the personality. So already you're going to lose when you make the obvious roster move you are going to have to do. And I'm sorry, I don't care if they ride this season out. You are going to have to make one of those people be kicked out of the team, unless you were going to sign a simple-esque player and they were going to drag you to the top again. If you're not doing that, because that's the other thing. Notice how you haven't even heard a rumour over the last 6 months of a big name aside from Simple Let's joining. You don't hear about it. There was the Twists one, and that was just a Telegram one from Russian people, which I've learned at this point in time. Some of those aren't real, mate. I don't even know if those are fucking ever real move. That sometimes I feel like that's just a move they want to happen. So they just say it's happening and hope it sort of magically has the effect in the world. And someone goes, hey, that is a good idea. Yeah, I was thinking of doing that. So already that's fucked you on that end. Then you add this whole thing of like, well, Elige was having all problems. I refuse to believe the Jacob guy has fixed that issue. Because I'm with you, TeaTime. He just isn't it. I know it's early days. He hasn't got to play much. But here's the problem. Because he'd done almost fuck all before that, what am I hyped about? Like, people keep doing this cargo cult thinking where they go, but Thorin, remember last time a no-namer joined called Brokey? He turned out to be pretty good. First of all, he turned out to be pretty good like 3 years later after the online era. And then secondly, he was signed, as far as I know, because they couldn't get any other big name players. And I think Nico had played with him in FPL. There was nobody behind the scenes raving about this Jacob guy because they'd even played him at fucking Lands. I never heard a single person ever rave about him. Even on one of those lists of like the people who are nerdy in the scene who keep the list of like, you know, here's the top 20 prospects. I think they had him like 11th. They were like, put it this way, yes, Makaze was on the, you know, all the names that have been added, Keisuke, he was weird. There was people above him on this list you've never even seen play if you're not TeaTime, basically. Like, you've never seen these people play press. There was no hype that this guy had to be. It's why everyone just assumes, even though Carrigan denies it, because you have to understand, for professionalism reasons, he can't say on camera, guys, yes, me and my wife, as Pillow Talk, discussed what you secretly are supposed to keep as privileged information in your team. He has to say they didn't talk about it. But all I'm going to say is, do you really think anyone's marriage works that way, where they go, now, darling, I know you're not supposed to tell me this, So I won't ask you this following. Yeah, the joke is you can even do it like that. You could do, now I'm not asking you about this. So if you were to tell me what he's not like, that would, you could do a whole thing like that. But the point is, I'm pretty sure that's half the reason they signed him. There's obviously the in there where maybe she knows something about him, or the fact he's maybe he had a good attitude, maybe he could By the way, I'll give him one thing I saw from POV. He seems like he has decent English comms. He isn't a guy who can only speak Polish or something. He seems like he can maybe speak English from all the FaZe games and was comming properly. The problem is, in the server, it's just been lackluster. And I'm not talking about stats. He just hasn't been that good a player in the matches I've watched. And since, like I say, he wasn't some crazy prospect before, I don't know why that's supposed to turn around. Like, am I missing something? What is it supposed to be about Carrigan calling and Rain sitting next to you, patting you on the shoulder, that's going to make this guy, the obvious answer is, as good as Elige was? Because Elige wasn't his ring. He wasn't peak Elige, but he was pretty fucking good. And I'll tell you what, I think FaZe at the end of this season will look back and they will go, shit, we actually had a pretty good player there, no matter what the vibes were. Because if you look at the team now, all you've got in this team now, I'm real, is just Frozen and Brokey, that's it. And the Brokey one still has an asterisk. I don't even know if that maintains. Yeah, right now he has rolled back the years. He's winning all the Brokey clutches. Let me see that at all the big lands. Let me see 5 lands of that, then I'll start to believe. Because here's the problem. Even if he did exactly that, that still wouldn't make this team relevant. Like, he's actually got really good stats right now. And by the way, here's the saddest part of all. There's the rumour that people have. People even claim it's actually why they think Elige got kicked. People think, like Chad's famous now quantum superstate Discord message, which he clearly did say in that message, he'd heard that. But then he had to quickly again professionally come back to like, oh shit, that was just like a comment or whatever. Like, when his message, he implied FaZe and potentially Frozen maybe didn't what fuck we're playing with Elige, right? If you're Frozen, bro, if you were really considering leaving or you threatened to leave, at the end of the season, you will be leaving. Like, you're a prisoner of this fucking team right now. Like, if people don't know, forget Elige for a moment. Frozen stats, I know Maui will know this, Frozen stats for this year are mega, especially for the fucking team he is playing in. And if you ever watch the eye test, he's a really good player. It's actually sad that, by the way, he actually played kind of shitty at that Austin Major. Aside from that, the whole year I've watched him, he just looks fucking good, mate. He should be in a top 5 team. We've got to the point now, FaZe was always okay in the last 3 years because they were only, I know this sounds like the Falcon meme, but it's real. They were only ever one move from the top again. One move is all it would take and they could go right back to win everything. One move wouldn't even fix this team. So I have to say this, if I am Frozen, I would genuinely start looking for your way out, mate. And also, here's the last thing to say. People like Rain and Carrigan, no matter what they say now, the day they do decide to retire, you're not even in your FaZe Clan anymore, mate. Well, why are you staying? And the second they retire, you have to keep going. You have to position now while you're really good. So I actually don't get what people can get into about. That's why I like that it's in bad, not ugly, by the way. I think it's just generally bad across the board. I also will just throw this in finally. Even though they've said all the right things leading into this roster, I don't believe, this is a pure speculation, when I look at their faces, Maui, and the FaZe players are either playing the game or talking, I don't believe they actually think this is going to be a top team. I feel like it's all like you just say the words because you just hope, you're almost trying to convince yourself. It just looks like copium when they talk, bro. And some of these angles, like it's why I actually do think, we've mentioned it in the past, I'm sorry, the idea, Maui, that it turns out, all those vlogs we were all watching during the major, there was loads of content about FaZe Clan behind the scenes. We're loving Simple. You should see some of the shit he does in practice. The fact that has all been completely retconned to, it was just an elaborate ploy to get Brokey to play well again. I do not play. I'd love to get you motherfuckers with a lie detector, sodium pentothal, James Bond shit. Now, Mr. Bond, you will tell me that. I'd get you all. There's no way you're telling the truth. So sadly, as someone who was a massive fan of what FaZe did represent, I don't feel like it's there anymore, mate. It's kind of dead for me. To me, it's just a whatever team. I just don't give a fuck, which is a bummer. I agree. I think it's a fucking bummer, boys. Right. Shall we go on then? Here's the thing. Yeah. If you thought Complain About FaZe was bad, this is going to sound like a mad hater take. Because remember, I haven't picked ugly. This is my bad point. Oh, no. Get ready. Because this team, by the way, listen, they're still making playoffs every time. So I'm going to say my bad point is going to be the T side / identity of MOUZ. Because I'm going to say right now, bro, I think MOUZ, this season, they are going to be cooked. Like, what people miss is, this is how I can always tell what filters you use on HLTV. Mate, a lot of their stats for the year with this roster are being carried like a motherfucker from that first season. And including, by the way, things like PGL events, etc. If you look after the major, holy fuck, on T-side is their fragging bad. And their numbers on every number. You know that famous page you all love to look up? The FTU page on HLTV for top teams, right? If you go there, bearing in mind, as I just said, this team is at the moment a lock to make a round of 8 at worst and a semis at best. But at the moment, they only made the first final, and after that, they don't make finals and they don't win tournaments. It's going to get worse, and here's why. Every single stat on the FTU page is appalling for a team making the semis, Maui. Like, round win percentage on T side, bro, there are something like fucking 15 teams above them. On T side, then every T side stat, opening kills. Now, mate, if you have a team with exertion, I would think you'd be one of the best opening round. Their opening round kills are fucking terrible. They're at like 35%. If you don't know, Fury has 48% opening round kill on T side. Then you got every stat, by the way. 5v4 is not good. 4v5 is not good. About the only one that's all right is like trading. That's about it, which is just like just the top team. Here's why I think this sucks. Because this roster hasn't had a change. They're actually now one of the longer running rosters this year. They've had from basically the beginning, they've had Spinks in, from basically after Katowice. They've gone to all these events, so you've seen massive sample size of them. And they were at one point for real number 2 or number 3 in the world, and they had this really strong map pool, and they could play everyone close. They can still play people close. The problem is, the warning signs are there for me that this team's just going to degrade month by month by month. Like, even the reason why I bring up the stats part is because the one thing I also thought about this roster is you don't have the superstar, but you have like, holy fuck, like really good players in every role. You'd think this team would be fucking fragging out the ass out T-side. You think they'd be dominant. They're actually getting worse, it looks like. So I know it's early, but I'm ringing the warning bell now. I think MOUZ is going downhill, mate. I think something's fucked with their T-side. And this is where you're going to have that really awkward conversation that we all thought we were past, which is, do we actually need a real IGL? Can Broland do this gig? So what do you think, boys? I'm going to throw it open to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing you talked about is probably one of the most important things for me. It's that you always get to see how good a team actually is without their IGL. Like, normally it's 3 months, to be honest. I'm surprised that it lasted this long for MOUZ, but it's like 6 months down the line. If now Broland was still doing it, even after now they've been more studied, they've actually had time where every other team is resetting their strats. That's one of the things I think people also don't really take into account is how incredibly important like the 2 weeks leading into the season are for teams, which is that this is when you have to completely redefine your team based on what you are predicting will be the metagame, right? You don't have tournaments to look at. Sure, scrims are there and whatnot. That's fine, but predicting the metagame going forward and beyond into seeing like how teams will adapt, then being really quick at adapting to, hey, was I right? Was I wrong? This is the kind of stuff that proves whether you have a real IGL at the front. And look, I'm not going to take anything away from their coach. I think zont1x and Cyclone have both been doing fantastic work for a long time, but there is a difference between having a defining voice, and we've never really thought Cyclone or zont1x are these, authoritative Blade-esque figures or Saw-esque figures who are clearly completely controlling the game from A to Z or whatnot as well. It did feel like Shuey was a big part of that. And to be honest, now that I think back towards how he departed from the team as well, right, where they were said that there's differences in opinions about how to run the game and how to go forward and this and that, I do start to wonder whether, and look, this is pure speculation, I'm too much of a no-namer to know anything about what happens behind the scenes for some of these teams. I do start to speculate like, hey, was Cyclone maybe in over his head a little bit and starting to think that he can run the team better? And look, it worked out initially, but later on, now you're seeing all of those drop-offs coming through. Now you're seeing, a necessity of superstar performances rather than being pleasantly surprised by them coming into a semifinals. I do think, I'm with you. Unfortunately, MOUZ is very unlikely to start coming back up this hill because I've never felt like Broland was going to be like a long-term IGL. I was maybe fooled into it for a little while. But the worst part is it's not even bad if they're like the 5th best team in the world. It's just that it's so much worse than what they were 6 months ago is the only problem. And I don't think they're going to slide downhill, but they're never a contender again.
Put it this way, after that Cologne, when they were like second and they'd beat Vital, I think most people would have said, hey, they're going to win tournaments. Maybe they could be number one. Like, what do you think, Maui? Where are you at on MOUZ?
MOUZ's game just comes across as incredibly unsexy. It's just, watching them play is almost like everybody is given a fair chance for a fight every round, but there's not a lot of sacrificial elements or hierarchy that makes them feel like you're seeing one. Like, I don't really feel like one guy is always outlined to be the star, and I think that's actually a huge flaw in modern CS. I feel like, for example, when Exertion's taking space in mid, he's kind of getting that donk space taker role with set up by all the utility, taking the space. But then when he's running in on an execute, he's oftentimes first, and donk gets to actually bait a lot of times on these kinds of executes. And I would rather he just just outline one guy as being the big star. Just you need to make one guy the high priority, gets all the resources player, because it just feels like if you keep feeding a hot hand in Counter-Strike, it really does you a lot of favors. If you and it almost is like when Vitality gets mad at ZywOo for running in first, they would actually get mad at him. They'd be like, you don't need to run in first. Like, let somebody else run in first. That's why even though Mezzi's a supportive element, he's running in before ZywOo a lot of the time. He's, so they want him to be a sacrificial player, and he does a great job in it. That's why Techno and Mongols are kind of endearing. He's a very sacrificial player, but actually at EWC he got to run in second sometimes. But point aside, it's just that when there is a hierarchy, like I used to think of the game like Dota a lot, where it's just positions 1 through 5, who gets the most resources. And for me with MOUZ, I feel like they're trying to make everybody get an equal amount of resources, which is just not a good idea. You want it to be a win by committee, but that's kind of cope. You want it to be everybody has a chance, the best chance, but some people do have a better chance than others. So I just wish that MOUZ would rethink things a little bit. I also wish that some of their players would, and it's hard with some of these guys who still seem to get a little bit more nervous on bigger stage moments like Exertion, where, yeah, sometimes he's outlined to be the star, but some strats he's actually not supposed to be a star. And I wish they just always just said tomorrow, Spinks and Exertion, you will always be the star. Yes. Yimpad, if you do well, that's a luxury. Torzy, you're going to get to choose your op shots on CT side, but you're just going to mostly hold the line on T side for us and throw a lot of nades. And on CT side, you're always going to have the big games for us. Just do something that's a little bit more akin to Spirit or Vitality, where they know who's supposed to get the most of the majority of their kills, and anybody else getting a kill is a bonus. I would want, I don't know, with MOUZ, I used to be in the camp that if you just hold on in the semi-elite status, like a top 5 team, just wait for your moment. You'll eventually get it. But for MOUZ, it's been the depreciation and noticeable depreciation that in kind of more the eye test. I don't think the results are actually becoming that bad. Like they're not really falling off a cliff tournament to tournament. The worst that they did was EWC, they were top 8, but everything else they've done for the entire year since Spinks came in has been a semifinals finish. But that just it's not speaking to me in the same way that, say, like a Cadian-led Heroic. I thought that team would eventually get over the line.
But it's where Maui,
a couple of trophies.
Even when they win games, and obviously example is this Blast. Bro, that series against M80, I would hang my head in shame after that. I know they blasted the third map, but they could have lost 2-0 for real on stage to a team that basically has almost no arena experience. Like, they for real, they might have games that they're like just getting over the line. Well, if you have superior talent, you probably should, but that game worries me, bro.
I think one of the things...
go for it.
I think one of the things that also makes me concerned about what you're saying, Maui, is that when you don't have a clear star outline, this is also where I go back to my questioning Cyclone bit, because dude, you've got Ziplinks on the team. Astralis went through this exact same thing for themselves, right? Where they didn't want to take responsibility. They didn't want to have a star player. They didn't want to say that, okay, 1 or 2 of our players are better than everyone else. We need to play through them. Ziplinks has been there, done that. So I can't believe that he's going to be the person who's, maybe not advocating for a little bit more of it. And if he isn't, then that's just strange to me. So I do sort of go back to I have to raise question marks around this to the coaching staff, unfortunately.
Also, one thing I will speak to as well, TeaTime. Another thing that actually Chad was one of the people who revealed some inside info is there was an event, I forget which one, it might even have been Cologne, where Chad was stood near MOUZ during one of the games, and he made some comment Exertion's calling a lot of the game. That's also why I wonder, like you said, TeaTime, if you go all the way back to what changed MOUZ at the beginning of this year, this move where out of nowhere they just booted Shuhei out of the team, even though, by the way, the only team they lost to at the major was fucking the winners, Spirit, in a massive 3-game series that they could have won. When they kicked him out, one of the things since then, with all the people who've seen them talk, people say that now it's almost like they call by committee in the team. It's not just Brolan talking and he's the captain or whatever. People say Exertion on some maps is calling on certain parts. That's another thing I think is really dangerous, because here's the problem. I think you can do that at the lower level. If you want to be the 7th best team, you can probably do that with a bunch of good players, good smart players. You figure it out. If you want to be a really great team, you guys have nailed both parts of it. One, you probably do need a dedicated caller who really understands the identity of the team. But also, two, you need to streamline the squad. You need to know where the resources go and who the stars are. And I actually agree with you, Maui. In a weird way, I actually think they do a disservice to those really good players in the team by almost, like, it allows both parts. It allows, on the one hand, yes, someone else can carry, but also it means there's no pressure on you. I think if you want to, by the way, if you want to be Exertion, people are going to tell me at the end of every year, bro, you are one of the 10 best players in Counter-Strike. Then play like it. Take the appropriate thing. You are a star on certain maps. If it's like Mirage T-Set, you better be fucking doing work. You need to be in all the fragging positions. And then if you don't make it after that, then we can have that conversation. But we can't have this sort of thing of like, well, you know, no one's really to blame and we're all just doing our part and everyone's equal. That's just not reality, is it? I mean, it might be comfortable to say that in a conversation, but you got to face harsh reality. And I agree with TeaTime. The person whose job it is to actually face that is the coach. They're the ones who are supposed to be the bosses and supposed to tell people, yeah, you might want this, but I'm going to make it run a different way. We're going to do things my way, this way. So I know what you mean. Because that's the problem when you have a team like this. Notice another detail I'll just throw in there for you. Maybe this will stimulate some thoughts. Another problem they have, boys, is they are basically performing way above the pay grade of the org, as it were. Notice how you've never heard a single rumour the whole year. Where's the rumour that a big name player joins MOUZ? You've never heard that ever. Never heard that fucking rumour ever. There's none. None of the up-and-coming players, none of the established... Like when Elise leaves, there's no story that maybe Elise does, but that's not even in people's minds. So that's why I'm worried about MOUZ, because I feel like if you're the MOUZ org, you're already killing it, bro. To even have a team this good, you're already doing an awesome job, mate. You've got a team that's consistently top 4. You've beaten Vitality. You've been in the final of Cologne. You can't ask for much more at the grade you're at. But the problem is, if we want this team to be number 2 in the world, or even better, number 1, hopefully, it just doesn't seem like this lineup does it. You know what I mean? I don't know how you change it even.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't even have academy prospects now.
You know, you're just so much more likely to stagnate if everything is just diffused, if it's so opaque as to who's the priority person. Because then what you end up doing is you just go back to the strat book and say, okay, we got to improve the strats. Okay, if that's the case, then it's win by committee and that it's down to the strat that's being called. Then everybody's equally to blame, or the coach at that point. And that's why I just wish teams ran with a little. Counter-Strike, everybody can shoot. So everybody has a fair opportunity to get a kill, but in reality, that's just not how it really is. I mean, it's not like it's I'm not going to go as far to say it's like basketball, where it's like there's only one ball, so only one guy can shoot. But there is a hierarchy that needs to be created, so then people can focus on individuals and who needs to be popping off more in these kinds of games. And if it is, because for whatever reason, the conversation this year about MOUZ, weirdly, it's like, okay, who's not showing up for them? People are, Yimpat's name is being thrown around a lot. It's like, when is this guy being given anything to succeed? It's that he overperformed last year for having a very low resource spot. And now that he's not succeeding in that position, he's the weaker player now. But it's like, I'm looking more at the people that are supposed to be stars. I think Spinks is still the best player overall in this team, but the secondary rifle star in my eyes is Exertion. If Exertion could just play a little bit better, but I don't think they're always setting him up. I think sometimes when he runs in first on an execute, that he's being the one that's hard done. Like, let Yimpat run in front of Exertion, okay? Because I let everybody run in front of Exertion, and then we could just say this is Exertion's team if they win or lose. But MOUZ is nobody's team. I'd be hard pressed to ask somebody on right now who is the clearest star player on MOUZ based off of how they play around this person. I think that's a very difficult question. I know who I think is the best, but I don't think I know who MOUZ thinks is their own star.
You know how sometimes you're looking back at like your ex's messages and saying, man, I did actually screw this up a little bit. It's kind of stupid of me, right? Like, I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have done this. Yimfat's opening those DMs from like Grant from Falcons being like, bro, you're looking real good right now. Like at 3 a.m. in the morning, right after I've lost.
By the way, think about how that narrative has changed, TeaTime. That joke works now. It used to be the opposite joke when MOUZ was popping up. When Falcons was struggling, everyone was like, Yimpat fucking dodged a bullet there, mate. He's now thinking, not only would I play with all those players, I'd get like 50k a month. Like, what are you talking? I think that might be real. He might really be rethinking that, mate. And that shit might have sailed too. Maybe you can't even get that deal now. Who knows? We have a return sponsor, which is, of course, the wonderful Ridge. But this time, I'm not here to talk to you about their awesome wallets, keychains, etc. But their new product, which is a power bank, I actually think takes certain cues from what they did with the wallet and the key case. So I always tell people with the wallet and the key case, it's a quality of life upgrade in ways you wouldn't think of, where they've sort of found their own innovative solutions to problems that you might have thought are just standard to having a wallet, having a set of keys, etc. An example would be on the key case. Normally your keys jingle in your pocket and stick out, etc. That doesn't happen on the wallet. Normally it's really big, isn't it? And to have a certain amount of things in, it's not going to be that compact. They've solved all that. Similarly, with the power bank, think about in the modern day how many different devices you want to power, you want to charge when you're out and about. And the problem that you have, especially over the last 10 years, is how many different like types of charger, cable, different standards across the industry. There are so many that like you either have to have a whole bunch of cables with you or multiple power banks, or maybe one only works one type of device or it works slower. As usual, Ridge has come along with the solution to all those issues, and it's really simple. You can just get yourself a wonderful Ridge power bank, can't you? So they have a 5-in-1 travel power bank, which has built-in cables and lets you charge all your devices at the same time on one power bank with no extra cables. So they have MagSafe wireless charging, Apple Watch charging, Lightning, USB-C, all that you can imagine in one premium device. You don't have to worry about all the different adapters and outlets and think, oh, what if the airport doesn't have the right one for me? It has 20 watts of power, so it'll charge your phone as fast as it possibly can. And with 10,000 mAh capacity, you've got up to 3 full phone chargers in your pocket. As I say, it has the MagSafe compatible wireless charging, so you can actually just magnetically put it on the back of like an iPhone, for example, and charge it that way. So there's all sorts of, as usual, it's built to last like all Ridge things. So you get free shipping, 99-day risk-free trial, and a lifetime warranty. So basically, this is the last power bank you'll ever need. So how do you enjoy this power bank? Well, you can go either to Best Buy, if you're in America, for example, or our listeners can get 10% off at ridge.com using the code SNAKE, easy to spell, it's the first name of the show. At the checkout, just head to ridge.com, use code SNAKE for 10% off, and you're all set. If they ask where you heard about them, why not say Last Free Nation or Snake and Banter? Thank you to Ridge for powering this episode of Snake and Banter. Right, should we move on then, boys? Let's do the ugly point. So, TeaTime, what is your ugly point?
Not the X I was talking about. No, this is where I think that I want to paint like it's a continuation of what you were already talking about with MOUZ, right? So let's unless you're driving, in which case don't, but let's close our eyes and sort of throw ourselves back to about April this year. And you're looking at the team list that's there. Number one's obviously Vitality, this insane clearly era that's going to be had, and it's just a matter of sealing the deal and just getting that done, right? You've got Zywo and Robs together. Apex is maybe even getting into contention for GOAT IGL if he keeps on playing like this and whatnot as well, right? Okay, immediately after that comes Falcons. Falcons have been like 3 rounds away from beating Vitality at 2 different finals. You've got Nico and Monazy. Holy shit, this is insane, right? Like, this is such a good team to watch. And then third place is MOUZ, who just like magically Torzy's becoming like an actual S-tier opper for the first time ever. Exertion is like coming in and competing. They've somehow got this sick Broland storyline about he's now a real IGL somehow. How cool is this? Then fourth place, you've got Donk in a fourth place team entering the GOAT of Counter-Strike discussion, right? Like, that's nuts. And then fifth place is the Mongols, right? Who are sure they're like your perennial chokers or whatever, but they're the group stage killers, right? So at any given point, if you want to have a group stage upset, you're looking towards Mongols. That's such a sick narrative-based top 5. And even if you extend that beyond, I mean, there's a few really good names. It's probably the best top 5, I mean, at least in front of me, that I've ever seen sort of play pro Counter-Strike. Now you looked at today. Vitality is still really good. They are. You know, there's no question about it. Zywo's still GOAT candidate. He is, but they don't have that sauce anymore, right? Like they're losing clutches like they did to G2 that in ways that you'd never see them before. They're losing out by like missing utility on executes. That shit that you don't really see before. You don't really have anyone bailing them out in the same way anymore, but they're still really good, but it's not Vitality of April. Then you've got Mongols in second place. Now listen, I hate to say this. Mongols are probably one of the more exciting teams right now, in my opinion, and obviously I'm biased, but also at the same time, they're probably not winning trophies consistently. They will maybe be like quarterfinals upset merchants and be getting into semis and whatnot, but it's very unlikely that they win a trophy or maybe even make it to an S tier final in the same way. You've got MOUZ, we've already talked to death about how flawed they are. Spirit's just been changing players, and now they've got weird role situations going on. You know, where we don't really know how Tanir is going to be fitting into this team. Dong's still like hyper carrying, but now you've also lost Magix, and you still don't have like this team getting better. It feels like it's just sort of a 1-for-1 with Zwei. You're not seeing improvement for this team, and you're just thinking again, like, how is this team even winning a match? Falcons, who the hell knows what's going on over there, right? Like, I'm not even putting them in the top 5. And then comes in G2, who, sure, they've just won a tournament. But even the tournament they're winning, you see that their Opper, like zont1x, just doesn't perform versus the elite Oppers. You're seeing that you need an overperformance coming out from their 3 riflers, and like Hunter as an IGL also getting some good moments, and frankly being bailed out by some big mistakes as well on the other side. This is still a really good top 5, right? And this is why I think this is an ugly point, is that unfortunately, because of the VRS conversation clouding up so much of the atmosphere, I don't think people have really clocked what a sharp dip in excitement we've had in just terms of pure top 5 caliber from last season to this one. And this season, compared to some of the ones we've had in the past, is still it's still crazy good, right? Like, you've got 3 genuine GOAT candidates in the top 5 sort of competing. If you're putting Falcons in top 5, that's awesome. For me, that's almost never before seen, except maybe like 2019 or so, right? But unfortunately, it's such a sharp decline that I think we're going to have like a real hit once we get over the major fever and we get past October and we start seeing like people actually look to the major and thinking, actually, we don't have very many strong storylines anymore. We don't really have these epic battles that we've been painting all season. These are all just very heavily flawed teams now.
Well, this is the problem and worst aspect of a parity era, because everything you said about the first 6 months of the year is framed with the ever-persistent excuse that the teams would eventually lose to Vitality, and it was the one saving grace that just every single team could boil all their flaws down to and be forgiven for the fact that, yeah, there's one unbeatable team right now. They're always holding up their end of the bargain as the favorites, and now that Vitality is no longer winning everything, it just feels like everybody else is underperforming because losses just feel random. They feel very easy to come by. You don't know where in a tournament a team is actually supposed to fall because Vitality were the benchmarks. And when people are worried or say that it's boring that a team is winning everything, it just gives us a reference point to always attribute failures or successes too. That's why consistency is good for stretches. You don't obviously want it to stay stagnant forever, but having one incredibly dominant team allows you to appreciate everything else that's going on around it just because, yeah, they're going to win the tournament. That's almost accepted. And so what is more, it's more consumable for really everyone, pundits and casual fans alike, because we just know that the hierarchy is not really it's not where like we're racing for the crown anymore, but everybody is fighting to see who's going to get the silver and bronze.
I do like the angle of how you broke the teams down. Like, I'll run down a little one of my own. Like, I agree on the Vitality one. The funny thing is, it's a bit like MOUZ. The placings are still great. If you only look at the Liquipedia, you'd be like, there's no problem at all here. The issue at the moment is this. In Season 1, they actually did have a whole bunch of moments where they could have lost, not just the famous Melbourne one to Falcon, but they had like individual best of threes where someone could have got them in 2 or it was a close third game. You know, they'd have like a train decider or something. The difference is they never failed. No matter what it took, they would just win the Locky round, they'd win the no-scope round, right? The joke is, that moment we all remember of ZywOo missing what looked like the most uncharacteristic miss ever, because it turns out that actually Blitz ducked at the last second for no reason. Almost like the universe was like, you don't get to win this one, ZywOo. Like, just completely random. That's like, that summarizes what the last like 2 months has been like for Vitality. Like, the joke I was making on this other podcast, the one that's just released now, the counterpoints to a pimp, is that if you watch this last final, right, the way Season 1 went, guys, G2 was never supposed to win this final. It was supposed to be 3-1 to Vitality on Inferno. When they were on the championship point, it was 12-11. Yeah. At the end, it was even like some Cloud9 phase shit where they were rushing the B side and there's like limited spots and utility for the players there. That just looks like if this was Season 1, they closed the game out, and there never is a 5th map. Everyone even would have said, who would have cared anyway? You'd have lost on train, as into the G2 guys, and then it would be Vitality's back on top, no problem. Even though eye test wise, they still don't look anywhere close to Season 1. There's still problems. But to me, that's a telling sign. There's a famous saying that says winners make their own luck. I do think what happens is when you are really, really really good, you just do create moments of like, every time there's like a chance, somehow you win the 50-50 every time. That's what they did in season 1. Now they lose them. And when they lose them, suddenly they look mortal and they can lose games and they can lose to opponents that are worse than them. And they clearly, the Zero angle's a really big one because he's having like one of the worst 2 or 3 months of his entire career. And you've noticed, look, here's how good Vitality is. That doesn't kill them. They still have a chance to make the finals, but they certainly aren't the fucking insane team before. Remember, the point last season was they weren't even battling for number 1. They were battling for number 1 to ever play Counter-Strike. That's the sort of shit they were doing. First of all, that convo's over for now. Now we're in a different Vitality. This is like, can you be the number 1 team again? That's the convo now. So already you don't have the dominant team. I would frame it this way quickly before I get to the others. The difference between season 1 and season 2 of this year is season 1, I agree, the top end was really good. And then the best of the top 10 was a bit weak. Now the bottom end of the top 10 is pretty fucking good. It's like Furia and Aurora and like, yeah, Falcons. If these are my bottom 5 teams in the top 10, I've got a pretty fucking good. The problem is it's the top teams that aren't as strong. And in fact, one of the factors why is because since everyone's also done these big gamble moves, most of them just haven't paid off yet. Like it might yet end up being that this Tenay move to Spirit's amazing and they end up being the number 1 team, which would kind of be cool. They could take Vitality spot. That might, but as of right now, no one really knows. Like the joke is they really have won events and then just bombed them completely and just been irrelevant. Then you go down, we've already discussed MOUZ, that they're just what you'd call like withering on the vine is what you say in English is the idiom. They're just getting gradually worse over time and you can see all the strength going out of them. The G2 one, no one yet knows if that is a real top 5 team's the problem. Certainly the ceiling looks great, but there was a lot of things went in their favour. This is clearly a honeymoon period, by the way. The other teams, you haven't yet done the thing where you play them in every semi, so you study the fuck out of them all. So I agree there's a lot still to be seen on that one. I'll even throw this out there, even though I think Heavy God's really good. It's not like they set the whole team up for him, mate. He's doing some like prime Rob shit where I can see why he says he wants Roch's demo. He has to do all that himself, mate. He doesn't have any resources. He actually is fairly like, he's like a player that just self-deficient. He just gets it done. So he might not be able to do that every event. I feel like they have more of a MOUZ vibe themselves. It's like a we do it by committee team, isn't it? They're dangerous boys. When you do it by committee, sometimes you turn around and go, why didn't we win? And they go, well, I don't know, it wasn't me. And then no one's to blame, are they? And then lastly, the Mongols one is obviously the harsh one because people don't want to hear this, but boys, if the only event you ever won was where Tekno was the motherfucking MVP, I don't care what copium you're on. He's not doing that again, is he? He's not going to be he's not going to be the actual MVP of a whole tournament. Like, I doubt he's even going to be your best player, so I don't think that is yet replicable. The normal Mongols performance, Senzu's really good, 9-10 shows up, blitz frags, that can happen, but the problem is, from what I've seen, there's a reason why until a couple of events ago, they had some crazy stat where against top 5, they just lost all the time, because they couldn't get over the line. Again, if that's going to be like my second or third best team, it is a weak top 5. I'm sorry, it just is. In an ideal world, Mongols would be like 5th. Then you'd be cooking, man. Now, if they're 5th and if we have like a super strong Spirit and a Vitality, and like you say, Falcons ever come online, you'd be dope. I'll even throw out there a couple of teams on the outskirts. Aurora, I expect to wither on the vine too, because their maps have gone. Valve just takes their maps out the fucking game. Like that doesn't, and they also look a bit figured out T-side wide. They've got all sorts of problems. So I agree. If you frame it that way, I think the bottom end of the top 10 is way better, but I think the top end's pretty weak. It's why actually at the moment, a lot of my hopes are pinned on the major. I hope everyone's rosters just peak for the major, and Na'Vi plays the best they can with Mikaze, and fucking Falcons get it all together, and Spirit integrate Tenay. If all that happens, we can have an awesome major. But as of right now, I know what you mean. It's not just other teams are winning. This is why I always tell people when there's a dominant, amazing team, be careful what you wish for if you ask for multiple event winners, because you forgot to add in that are also really awesome at the game. We don't just want random teams to win. Like, actually, when a different team wins every event, it has a novelty, but it also isn't kind of as cool. Like, it doesn't work as a storyline. Like, how does the G2 storyline work now? They were nobody, and now they're the champions. Like, okay. The problem is, if they bomb the next event, there is no narrative there. It was just a one-off fucking run, wasn't it? All the, jokes we all do, apologise to Hunter. Well, that won't even work then, will it? Like that only works if it's a sustained thing. They basically have to do a MOUZ and sort of surprise everyone. So, no, I like it. Is that it, boys? Are we going to... Oh, go on.
Sorry. I just think one of the things is, very quickly to put a bow on it, that makes it like a little bit more hurtful for me is the idea that in my head, I was like, yo, when Vitality starts to fall off, because it's inevitable and they will, someone's going to slide in and be elite right there. And all these guys are going for roster moves and whatnot. Yeah. And it feels like everyone just sort of moved to the side when Vitality took a step down. Like, hey, we respect the Kings. You can have your time to come back up, figure your shit out. Like, you guys have got this. And that's just kind of what sucks, I think, more for me.
Sure. Right, Maui, what is your ugly point?
Mine is just, this is kind of after reading the Richard article. on the fact that the PGL Masters event was moved for their grand final date to a day earlier to accommodate the Chengdu start time. And I just find that this whole strong arming aspect of the TOs, well, ESL in this case, to make sure that teams basically don't go to the PGL event is kind of absurd. I'm mostly diving into one aspect of this because there's a few things you could pick up on, and Richard picked up on a few, like ESL's involvement in EWC, and so teams are probably afraid of losing the stipend that program gives to them. But the one paragraph that I'm really kind of keen on here is that the one that is Valve has a rule set for VRS invites and having sequential invites based on what the ranking system provides, and that teams should just be invited purely off of the ranking. And I remember that CCT couldn't even hold up their own kind of shadow ban teams because it would violate what VRS's invite policy is. And I was just kind of what I'm aspecting, the thing I'm really referring to here, if people we're not following this whole issue very closely, is that ESL said that if you don't attend Chengdu, you would then forfeit your position at IEM Krakow, which is kind of what is now taking over for Katowice. So obviously people are billing it up to be one of the premier events of the upcoming year. And so all the teams said that they were going to still take the invite to Chengdu, go there, and then in turn, PGL knew that they would lose a few teams. I'm not actually sure how many or which teams, but they would lose some of the teams attending their event. And so they moved their start date over. And again, disclaimer here, I get hired by PGL a lot. In fact, I've already talked about this on a prior episode of Snake and Banter. I'm already hired for multiple events for PGL in the upcoming year, so I have a vested interest in their success. But
PGL employee.
The fact, so PGL employee and Blast employee. Okay. I'm just saying, I just give these disclaimers.
Sure.
Because some people in the industry don't.
Yeah.
Just don't give the disclaimers. So I mean, I think it's fair. I think it makes it fairer in terms of the discussion. I just think that the whole Valve's selective reasoning between CCT and ESL, I guess in this case, of just allowing them to add fairly arbitrary rules to who can and can't go to their events it just feels like it's unfair. And I feel like this is, I don't want to get into a whole discussion of VRS and everything like that because we do that too often, kind of already touched on that in this episode, but I just think that this is one instance that where the lack of consistency is clearly harming a particular TO, because now PGL have to redo everything. They made plans for accommodations for how their tournament was supposed to be run, the dates that their employees could work. Like even thinking about let's just say the random PGL janitor that he thought he was going to come in and work on that Sunday now is no longer going to be paid for a day of work that he otherwise was going to be going there. Yeah, it's very, and that's because ESL threaten teams that they wouldn't be
you're a
allowed
man
to
of
go
the
to
people,
their
Maui.
subsequent event.
I care about the little guy, the janitor. He's working that blue collar job. He's telling his wife, "I've got the weekend booked to PGL, and now I've only got Saturday. How am I going to put gruel on the table for the car?" Okay, all right. I'm going to Dickensian route here, Maui. I like it. Okay.
Just saying that it makes everybody have to change their entire schedule because of this. So in general, I just think that the inner workings between a few of the premier TOs and VRS and their decision of like selectively when they should and shouldn't use VRS invite rulings is it's ugly. It's an ugly point for me.
Wasn't it PGL who did this? And I'm just asking. Also, disclaimer: I do get paid by PGL. Maybe I also get paid by ESL, probably equal amount. So, wasn't it PGL who started this first though, where they said that if you have accepted an invite to our tournament and then you withdraw from it, then you will be barred from attending the next one? Like, wasn't this when Furia claimed that they had visa issues, which is why they withdrew from like Cluj-Napoca, I would like to say? I'm pretty sure PGL was the first one to do this.
I think there was an instance where PGL also did that, actually.
Like they didn't actually do it, but they declared that this would be added to their inviting rule set. But anyways, so there is that to just sort of keep in mind that this isn't necessarily like hey, ESL is taking first precedent on this, or like Valve is maybe choosing one side over the other. And I'm not saying you're implying that at all, but obviously that's what a lot of the community sentiment might be. I might be wrong about that one, so please do let me know if I am. I think what also like really sucks is when you think about the idea, and just a strong arming in general, I just don't like that. When you think about the idea that PGL can also only bring their event back one day because it's a studio event, right? Like if this was an arena event, if this was like a big LAN arena event, which I think initially it actually was meant to be like in Serbia or something.
Yeah,
because there was
one.
Yeah, so if
it's
this
actually
was
the one where this
Belgrade,
Fisher arena is now, I believe. I think it's where they're having the playoffs, right?
Yeah, exactly. And for whatever reason, they haven't announced it publicly, so I won't get into it. But like for whatever reason, they can't have it. They can't have it there now, right? So if this was an arena event, you don't get to pull your event date a day back. Like that's just not possible. Arenas don't work that way. They're lucky in some ways that this is a studio as well, right? So you could have this be even worse. You could have this be a situation where teams are being like, well, we just have to skip this. There isn't even that flexibility. And why? Because what Krakow matters more to us. And sure, PGL, you can tell us don't come to your next event. But at the end of the day, if enough of us are saying this, you're just hurting yourself again. And like, how many times can you shoot yourself in the foot before you don't have a leg anymore? And yeah, I agree. It really does suck, especially when the leverage is Krakow that they're using, which is obviously like, one of the big 4 events of the year, or at least that's what they're hoping it will be. So I agree with you entirely. But, just on that point, I do think PGL did sort of set precedent for something like this.
By the way, I'm actually not sure who it was who did it in that sense. The problem with that ruling is this. In theory, it does make sense as a ruling. Like, the obvious example would be, if you didn't have this, right, a lot of teams would just accept every single invite, especially if they're a top 10 team, and then they would just see both mixed of things like, how's my roster doing? Do I even want to send them to this team event? Or have we had, like, no success and we need to attend an event? Or have we had a bunch of... A lot of them would do things like, back in the day, you would have big events, 2 or 3 teams might just drop out last minute. Well, the problem with PGL's was they put $1 million at least on every single tournament LAN, right? The problem with this is, if I was to say I have a LAN and I've budgeted the millions of dollars for the prize, and then like 2 weeks before, 5 of the top 10 drop out, you've just ruined my entire business model. It doesn't even make sense anymore. And how can I then say to the other teams, I'm going to have to half the price? But then what would that be? Also, by the way, it's probably not even allowed by the magical rules that Valve just decide whether they enforce or not. Who the fuck knows? And in general, this just plays in. It's why I like it as an ugly point. This actually plays into a bigger point about PGL and potentially ESL, but it's basically every other TO. I mean, I know it's Blast at the moment conveniently is in sort of a middle position where they don't seem to lack teams with the biggest event. I don't know how that works. I'm not an insider in that sense. But I will just say this. I would say, and I said this on Twitter, the difference is this. PGL still operates as if we're in like an ideal world of like, well, this is how it should be and this is how I would want it to be. Like, if you don't know, that rule actually does make sense. The reason why you ban some of them the next event, if they don't say they're going to attend, it's like I say, you've built the whole thing around it. You might even have made all content packages and fucking walkouts and things. You could have done all sorts of things. You've told press that this team's going to be there. That makes a mockery of it. It's like back in the day, if people don't know, ESEA, if you played an online season of ESEA and you qualified to the LAN and then you said, oh, by the way, I'm not going to the LAN, they would ban you for the next season for the same reason. It's like you just wasted everyone's fucking time. Like, what about the team that would have taken your spot? They might not even be able to attend now. So I don't hate the rule. But anyway, what you're seeing here is PGL's approach is almost like, here's what would happen if Valve ran the scene and they just gave everyone equal share and we could all just work with what we've got. But unfortunately, ESL, our masters, are always being the ones that have the leverage somehow. In this case, part of it, like you say, is through the EWC and the fact that everyone wants to be part of the club share program. And then you literally, if you don't know, guys, for not only, like, say, for a bunch of games, you get a stipend for your team. They essentially give you money to run your team. So essentially, ESL has found a bunch of like abstracted loopholes to allow them to do what they were always doing all the previous years, just run the calendar, and we always get the first dibs, and everyone by default goes to our event, and they're always going to skip 1 or 2 of yours, and especially, what do you know, it's always our event one day after yours, so it's impossible to just immediately go from Europe to China, so I guess they'll just have to turn it down. Like, all you've done there cleverly is you've done the same thing. You're just using your leverage, which, by the way, you could say is well earned. They are the best tournament organizer. They have this access to money that is is what runs the world. You're using your leverage to win. And in this case, you're like allowing it to seem like you're playing fair. But ultimately, if we were to give everyone the truth serum, you would just say, look, at the end of the day, I have the leverage and I'm going to use it and I'm going to win. Fuck you. That's what, it's a game and I win it. Now, look, I might have done like a slightly like, let's say, it's not even shady. It's just on the edges of like, it's like a loophole. We've exploited certain things cynically, let's say. I think in some senses, ESL are being a bit too sort of idealistic. Like I said, they're being a bit naive and think if we just do the right thing, it'll work out. People like ESL don't give a fuck about the right thing, or they just want to win. They just want to be number one. They want to get a one over on you. And I even feel like now, some of the ways they're fucking with PGL, I'm not even sure it directly does help ESL as much as it just hurts PGL. And I can tell you, there are people out there in the TO world who just want to hurt each other. They don't just dislike each other. They hate the other fucking TO and they think all the time about how to fuck with them and how to leak news and announce things at a certain time that'll fuck with their... Some of them are really gross at that. And unfortunately, the upside of the scene, I've always said, is Valve doesn't lean in. Valve just stays, I'm going hands off. The problem now, as people like Messi also pointed out, is Valve haven't messaged that. They've messaged, no, we've got all these really strict rules and you better all follow them. And this is going to stop the ESLs of the world dominating the calendar. If everyone follows the rules, it'll all be a nice, even playground where we can all share the toys. But the problem is they're not actually overseeing it. And in fact, I would go ahead and say, I don't know if Valve even read Messioso's messages. I don't think Valve knows what's going on, bro. I mean, most of us don't until Messioso tells us. Like, nobody gives a fuck to be in GitHub seeing what points you get. No one remembers, oh yeah, shit, it's true. You shouldn't be able to change the region for this event more than X number of months. Messioso's the only one who's on top of that shit, and sadly, he does not work for Valve. In fact, now he doesn't work for anyone. He's just a guy on fucking Twitter. So I agree. I do think it's a mad, ugly scenario. Like, I don't think it's been good in general. I also think it's really sad because here's the saddest thing of all. I don't personally like PGL for personal reasons only. And one of the things I think sucks, though, if I put my personal feelings out of it, is that at the end of the year, every single PGL event by now will have been fucked with on some level, where unless this one has all of them, none of them will have had all the top teams, despite the fact PGL, in terms of the prize money and the club share aspect that they have invested, that is enormous. That would have been one of the biggest investments ever from a TO that isn't ESL, basically, ever in the history of Counter-Strike. So the idea you come along and basically tell everyone what we all thought was going to be great about VRS, every event could be the biggest event, basically. They can all put millions there. We can all have the best scene you can ever imagine. And we haven't got that. We've got all these ones where PGL is putting together a tournament where they're taking care of everything they have control of, and then the teams are making it feel like it's like 50% as good event. And that for fucking sucks. Like, in a dream world, ESL, PGL, and Blast would all be awesome. It would just be about, if you chose not to attend, it would be based just on you. Like, oh, sorry, we're burned out. We just had like 5 finals. That'd be a reason to. But the idea you're doing it just because of some like Game of Thrones Machiavellian little finger move by fucking ESL, I do think that sucks. Like, that degrades the product I watch. I want it to be all 3 events, just see who does the best event. Let's just have fair, open competition, as it were. But that's also because I'm a naive, idealistic dreamer like PGL, maybe.
Also, I mean, I looked up the whole like Cluj Furia declining.
I couldn't find anything when I Googled it.
Yeah, they still went to the next event just fine. So I don't know.
Okay.
It sounds like, yeah. Do you know where that came from?
So I think I think what happened was basically because you're not allowed to change invite rulings until afterwards. I think Silvio tweeted something out. I'll go back and try and find it. If I do, I'll link it so that you can put it in the description. But I think Silvio tweeted something out like, hey, in the future, because we can't do this right now, but in the future, PGL will not invite you if you withdraw after already having accepted an invite. So it didn't happen again after that because, if everyone remembers, this is when Furia was like, oh, we've got visa issues, which is why we can't attend, even though there were intimations that this was because the teams were trying to force PGL to do club share. Cluj was the tournament where there wasn't club share. It was just a $1.25 million prize pool straight up. I think this was around then, but again, it's possible I'm wrong, but I will try and find and link this to you guys after the call as well.
I will also say one thing that reminded me of is the other part that I do think is fucked up is, if you notice, every time PGL tries to stand by what they've decided, they have to compromise, because at the end of the day, your event is nothing without the teams. It doesn't matter how much prize money. You have to have the teams that people want to watch compete. That people tune in for specific teams and for the best teams. Like, you can sometimes be a small team like an Arvia or Fury if you're not. But aside from that, people just want to watch the top 5 play. And if you don't have it, it doesn't matter how good your event is, that will always hurt you. And so I feel like the worst thing I think about the fact Valve just doesn't do anything is every time PGL just has to be the one who compromises. And even then, a bit like the club share thing that Richard pointed out. If anything, it's not even totally working. Like if moving the finals back one day got, say, like 3 teams extra that are like, I'm going to assume top 5 to 7 teams or something that you need. If it makes them play, that's still good, but you're still not getting everyone. But what more can you do if you're PGL? You're already putting all the prize money. You're already hiring all the venues. You're already getting all the... You've done everything. You even changed the club share thing to... If the point you were making, which by the way was a shrewd point, is I'll just change the club share how you guys say you want it. Right, there you go. Now are you attending? No. Well, then it was obviously some ESL shenanigans, wasn't it? Like, I've just done the thing you said was the limited factor. Exactly. I feel like it's the same thing with this. Now what you're doing is ESL's playing that game I just said before. I'm like, oh no, did I put my event in a different continent one day later? Oh, I probably wouldn't attend that if you could win my event because you'll play in the final and then can't travel in time. What a shame. And then ESL did their own version, remember, like, and if you're late, you get a penalty of your prize money. That's just a clever way of saying we're going to make life hard for you if you attend the PGL event. Well, the reason why that sucks if PGL then has to go, all right, guys, I guess I'll move the event one day back so you have time to travel. They're just having to fuck their own event up and they're not even getting all the upside anyway. These teams in ESL are still going to fuck with them, apparently. So I do feel, I can see why PGL feels hard done by that sense. I do think it's slightly unfair. And I wish, here's the thing, I thought we'd taken care of this night. I thought Valve was in charge. If Valve's in charge, you just come in. By the way, you can be like some authoritarian figure. You can come in and say, right, we're punishing this person, we're punishing, don't do this, do this. Do whatever you want, mate. It's your fucking game. You have all the IP rights. So, I know, it just feels so necessary to me, and I do think it makes the product worse. And the idea you could have all these $1 million tournaments, and at the end, they're not going to all have the top 10 in. Like, what the fuck is that? What is that?
Yeah, it's really annoying. I'll just go on a little tangent. Just that when I was going over all the tournaments of the year and where I'm probably going to position them in my ranking of which ones are more important and everything, I want, like, the most disputed tournament positions that I had were probably, I think the number one was Astana. I think people really wanted me to rate Astana as a much higher event, but the thing is that I just can't rate it, even though everything was done well. LAN group stage, great arena playoffs, a lot of people in the arena. It had the feeling of a major in terms of how many people were mobbing the hotel, actually. It was a great atmosphere, but I just can't rate it as highly because all these these teams just decide they're not going to go to it. It's just, and that's not PGL's fault. It's just these backdoor dealings and the way of just strong arming another tournament organizer when it should just be an open market, and it should just be open. It should be that's kind of what the whole VRS position was supposed to be that Valve was making when they created the system, but it just doesn't feel like you can actually ever have anything to be as good as it's actually first proposed.
By the way, I even hate the fact that when you had the first PGL, which was the most scoffed in terms of teams, and then MOUZ with Spinks won the event, they then just never attended any more PGLs. You even fucking ruined that narrative. So, like, even you stopped. The joke is that's to me what signals the shenanigans, because essentially that implies it. Now MOUZ is a big team, so imagine they don't attend anymore. Fuck right off. And by the way, I'll tell you the team I have the least fucking sympathy for entirely is I don't want to hear a single fucking tear ever from Team Liquid if they fail to make a major, because you chose not to attend VRS events like PGL with enormous prize money on LAN that your rosters on paper should be able to win, bro. Instead, you chose to go to ESL events and come last place, and then after that, with all the top teams there, so they're all really good, then you're going to complain you don't make the major. Bro, you're playing the opposite meta of the teams going to the Dracula, you fucking idiot. You should always have been going to those events because you weren't yet a top team. You should have been making semis of every PGL and just farming easy points. So you chose not to do that, bro. We didn't make you do that. We all wanted to see you there, for fuck's sake. But the problem is, I can tell you right now, especially outside of CS, Team Liquid is one of the biggest orgs the Saudis are involved with. They come second in every EWC. If people don't know, like, they're going crazy on all the games. They got all the fucking stipends, boys. So the issue is, I do feel like Richard just nailed that shit, like, in spring of this year. Like, you can see sort of by the fingerprints, if not there's no video of it, but you can see the fingerprints of ESL all over this shit, boys. And the fact that they just figured out the new loopholes. Before they could overtly do it, now they've just got their own, before they used to run the calendar if people don't know what's helped. All right, let's go on then. The final point of the show. I've purposely kept this one to be quite open. This is why I picked it as my ugly. It's actually going to be zont1x's status within Spirit. Because now, fucking hell, is zont1x the Russian FaZe? Why are we retconning all of history? One of the issues you have, basically, is they've now done this story, which was never mentioned until recently, of like, oh no, actually zont1x wanted time off, and so he's not even like actually like being kicked or joining anyone else. He's just going to be on the bench. And you know what? Like, you know, later in the story, our hero will return. Like, what the fuck? And they're putting all this stuff out. Maybe he'll return later in the year again, which is like, that's not at all what from the rumours we all had. We all had it as, right, you weren't happy with Magic's because you think the roster can't win anymore, so you did the change to Zway. Then you wanted Tanae because you maybe wanted him anyway, and then you're going to figure out, right, probably zont1x goes out the roster. That makes sense. There's a logic to that. In fact, the idea there, most people on talk shows I've talked about agree that could be an upgrade. Maybe with Tanae you win everything. Maybe you become number one. Who knows what the Zway angle, right? The reason I picked this as ugly, boys, is because on the one hand, I feel like there are aspects of this are good. Like, I'll tell you one thing I think Spirit can do that I have never seen a team in history able to do, is what you do in sports. They could actually, in theory, at any point in this next season, guys, depending on how the new roster with Tanae works out, bring in either zont1x or Magic's again. They could take out Zway. They can even take out Tanae if they want, by the way. They can just do whatever they want. If all these players really are sat on the bench, not going anywhere, and they all want to play in Spirit, you can actually have one of the only rosters ever where you really do decide based on like how it's going, oh, I'm going to bring this guy back actually, or I like what this guy brings on this map. You could do that. So I don't think that's necessarily entirely bad. It might be bad for those players, by the way, if they choose to stay there and they don't get to be the player. I feel like for Spirit, though, they can actually give you a sort of mobility I've never seen in a roster. Most rosters have to hard commit to the guy that they've signed. They have to kick the guy and they can't get him back. And we do have all these stories of you up, maybe I should have kept Chewy and all that shit. They're not going to, in theory, have that in Spirit. But at the same time, it's also like a really confusing set of circumstances. Like, one thing I'll just quickly shade in. I try not to make this too overt on shows, because in theory, every time this topic comes up in his region, he gets mega hated on. But even though zont1x is Ukrainian, let's just say he's from the really eastern part, which is the disputed territory between Russia and Ukraine. So unfortunately, I don't actually know, and I'm trying not to talk about it much, because obviously he's going to get in trouble if people think about this too much. I can tell you, he gets a lot of fucking, let's say, scrutiny from both sides in that regard. So the problem goes, people have implied maybe that's even part of this. Maybe some of this is a smokescreen for he either is having some issues with his visa, or maybe he can't even get a passport at the moment. Again, I don't know what the fucking logistical things are on the ground in that part of Ukraine. I don't think anyone does. And sadly, I feel like people have their own biases as to what they would say about that story. So there's even that angle of like, maybe this is all just some weird shit to allow them to bring zont1x back in 3 months or something. Who knows? So I don't know. To me, it's I think it's the ultimate ugly topic. I can see good, I can see bad, I can see in the middle. Where are you at on this move, TeaTime? What do you think about the zont1x stepping out of Spirit and potentially the uncertainty around it?
I'm going to start off with like the first funny, dumb thing that I thought when I read this, which is like Tanae has the possibility to now pull a double Dexter, which is that, you know, obviously in Heroic, he was playing for a little while, supposedly, while Nilo was supposed to be on the bench. And then he just turns out to be insanely good. And there's just never going to be a question of bringing Nilo back. Now he's got the opportunity to do the exact same thing. I mean, obviously Dexter did this when he replaced Mantu for like one tournament at like Blast Open Lisbon or something. And then I think Tanae is going to do that, to be frank. The person who I would be more concerned about is Way in this regards. I do think zont1x is going to eventually end up coming back and replacing him. I think that's just sort of one of those natural things. But what really sucks at the end of the day is that if this was like a mandatory if Spirit was forced into this, no matter what happens, I do feel like this entire season comes in with such a big asterisk because of it. Because at any given point, I can now give the excuse, well, Zway doesn't know if he's still going to be on the lineup in like 3 months. Oh, well, Tanae doesn't know if he's going to be on the lineup in 3 months. Can you really blame them for all this extra pressure? First of all, they're stepping into an S-tier team, and like not just an S-tier team, an S-tier team with the potential GOAT of Counter-Strike. If you aren't winning, it is your fault, right? Like that's just objectively true. So you are already under the most pressure. And now you've got the zont1x potentially coming back and just the specter of zont1x over your shoulders. And if it is logistical issues, trust me, man, I relate to visa problems more than probably most people do. It would really, really suck if that's the case. So yeah, I think it's a great point for Ugly, because genuinely everything about this is like, it makes me less excited about Spirit. I think that's what I sort of summarize it into. There are too many asterisks now on this team. There are too many, there are already questions about things like, oh, how are you going to make roles work between these teams? You know, why didn't you replace Zway in the first place? All of this and whatnot. Now it's just, hey, are we just about to waste another season of Donk's time? Like, is that what we're going to have? Do we have to do this every time we have a fucking GOAT player Can we maybe skip it for once and just have functional lineups, right? Yeah.
The wasting of Donk's prime is likely my biggest concern as well. I don't know, like Spirit were really vocal with me when I kind of mentioned stuff about Kyosuke and the handling of that situation, the lack of him being promoted to the lineup. They made it very clear to me that my sources say that was his choice. So they, but like everything that's happened after that is not looking all too favorable either. About just having this whole zont1x off, but probably coming back. Zwei being quite mediocre on the team, and then Tanir I think is great. I think Tanir is awesome actually. I think that's really cool. But now with zont1x's message, I don't know. Like if this is actually just the final lineup of Spirit, and I'm just supposed to accept it, cool. But the ambiguity is where it's obviously ugly. I wish it were because it almost is like. If Zwei had played well, I don't think zont1x would have said that he thinks he's going to be playing at the end of the year. Yep. But with how bad Zwei is playing right now it seems like it's opened the door for zont1x to return to the team. And I don't really even blame Spirit for considering that. I just wish throughout all of this that Zwei didn't just feel like a Nepo hire. I just kind of wish that was the case because he was okay on Nemiga. I thought he was probably overhyped. In general, like the eye test was never as cracked as what the numbers or what people were saying about him was. I didn't think it was that obvious of an upgrade. Like, again, I don't really think that the 1.12 rated tier 3 rifler is as good as the 1.03 rated rifler on a tier 1 team that's playing top 5 teams every day for his whole life. Like a natural 0.1 down in rating seems pretty common, which has kind of been my case for a few of the move ups lately, or the people, the players that basically it's for Skulls and Zwei. It's just like I totally expect them to fall off. I don't think that they're gonna. I would expect like a 1.2 guy is gonna hold up in tier 1, but I don't think a 1.1 is that much better in tier 2/tier 3. And it's not like Nemiga were playing good opponents. Like Nemiga were losing to NRG in Pro League, and Zwei was on the team losing to them.
As far as I can tell, it's largely just because of that major run. And it was just like a Swiss stage, right?
He knew he was going to be on the team if he played before the major. Right. He even said it at Cologne. He said before the major, they told me that if I do decently at this major, that they'll pick me up. And it was like, and he said that he didn't feel nervous because he's already friends with Shiro, Chopper, and Donk, and he already had pugged with Donk like 50 times. So it was never really up for debate. He was going to get on the team. That's why I just don't think. And I guess I don't know, like. Eye test wise, I still don't really get it. I still don't really get like Zwei is good on one map for me. He's good on Ancient, and I don't really think that the other maps he's proven a lot to me. So I would want zont1x back. I'm just gonna say that's my final statement on this. On my opinion is that I think zont1x is a better overall player than Zwei, and I don't think Zwei, even with 6 months, is going to surpass zont1x in my eyes.
I would phrase it this way as maybe like the final point. It's not even, because I agree with you, I actually think the today lineup could even be number one and win all the tournaments. My big issue, what I think is really ugly though, is the notion that in any context, this isn't actually the roster Spirit wanted to put in the fucking server. That's just stupid. Whenever you make a move, I'm supposed to believe you think this is the best for your team to make it better. And then as you say about the Donk one, to give Donk the best chance of winning. The joke is this might actually do that, but maybe you didn't even plan to do this. Maybe you were forced to do it. That feels ugly in itself, whether it ends up working or not.
So one more point I actually have about this, because I know people will love to jump on this aspect of it, is that zont1x cited his own burnout as a reason to take some time off. Use an academy player. Just using it. Why are we wasting Zwei's time? Why are we wasting anybody's time in not just at least giving somebody a legitimate chance here? So that's why it almost just feels. It almost really does feel like Zwei did so poorly in his first couple months with Spirit that the door is still open for zont1x, but it clearly. So that's my angle on this. I don't think that was supposed to be the initial plan. I think zont1x was supposed to be benched. I think they thought Zwei was going to do better. But if it was really just bring zont1x back in for Zwei, then I would have rather Zwei just continued grinding tier 2, tier 3. I didn't see enough from him over any course of time to say that yes, he deserves a Spirit slot.
I think another really weird part that just sort of came to my mind is that Tenera obviously came in second, right? And Tenera is the person they paid in a big buyout for. zont1x had alluded that, hey, I was waiting for my replacement to come in. I was just helping the team out until this is sort of figured out, and then I'm leaving, right? So Zwei is probably the one they were certain about getting as well, which is what makes it even stranger, because otherwise it's probably, zont1x is filling in for Zwei, while Tenera is the one that they're getting in initially and whatnot as well. So just even in terms of order of acquisition, it feels strange to me. Like Spirit, very uncharacteristically, are kind of lost or were lost in what they wanted to do. Some things clearly haven't worked out as well. And I say uncharacteristically because it does feel like one thing I will give credit to Spirit for, they've really felt like a pretty well streamlined team in terms of like the upgrades they've been able to make and like actually building into a good lineup and keeping it as a good lineup. It's felt like they've been doing the right things, but yeah, this is just really just a strange situation all in all.